Hey guys. Tonight, we begin with a truth as old as humanity itself. People will suffer almost anything in the name of looking good. It's history, but not the polished, glamorous kind. This is the world of toxic powders, hot irons, bloodletting, and whatever else someone swore would make you beautiful. The world is vain, painful, and more disturbing than any modern spy day could ever be. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just stepped into a beauty routine that might actually kill you. You arrive in the past with no warning, which is the worst kind of travel itinerary. One moment, you're minding your own business in the present day, sipping on overpriced coffee that tastes suspiciously like regret, and the next you're standing in the middle of a dimly lit chamber that smells like a combination of incense, rotting flowers, and something that makes your nose twitch with unease. Welcome to the beauty salon of history, where nothing is soothing, and almost everything will scar you emotionally, if not physically. A woman sits before you, her skin pale under flickering candlelight. She's not pale in the glamorous Instagram filter sense. No, this is the kind of pale that comes from painting your face with lead. Literally, white lead paste, smeared across her cheeks, chin, and forehead like frosting on a very unlucky cake. She looks radiant by the standards of her day, but if you're wondering why she occasionally coughs into a bloodied cloth, well, congratulations. You've just learned the first lesson of historical beauty: glow now, die later. You might think modern makeup has its dangers. Maybe clogged pores, a botched contour, or that one eyeliner wing that refuses to match the other, no matter how much you beg. But trust me, that's nothing compared to what's happening here. If Sephora sold this face cream, it would come with a skull and crossbones label and a complimentary funeral plan. The lead paste is cracked in spots, revealing the natural color of her skin beneath, a warmer, healthier shade that society has deemed unacceptable. In her world, pale skin is a sign of status, proof that you don't work outside in the sun like the peasants. So she endures the slow poisoning, smiling faintly even as her teeth blacken. It's a strange sort of irony: the more beautiful she becomes to others, the more monstrous her body feels to herself. You step closer, the floor sticky with spilled oils and unidentifiable goo. Her attendant stirs another mixture nearby, grinding ingredients in a mortar with all the enthusiasm of someone making a smoothie. Except this smoothie includes mercury and vinegar. Imagine walking into a modern skincare aisle and seeing, now with 20% more mercury, splashed across the packaging in glitter font. That's the level of absurdity we're dealing with here. The attendant applies the paste to the woman's face, and you notice how it burns ever so slightly on contact. Her eyes water, but she doesn't flinch. That's dedication, or maybe just resignation. Either way, it's unsettling. The smell is sharp, metallic, and clings to your nostrils like rust. If you've ever accidentally sniffed a permanent marker for too long in high school, you're halfway to understanding the sensation. Except this isn't a rebellious teenager's bad decision. It's a culture-wide ritual, passed down as though it were holy scripture. And here's where the historian in you, the voice that refuses to be quiet, even when you beg it to, whispers the facts. Lead-based cosmetics were all the rage across Europe for centuries, especially among the elite. Queen Elizabeth I herself was rumored to slather on Venetian ceruse, a mixture of lead and vinegar, to achieve her famously ghostly complexion. It worked wonders for hiding scars from smallpox, sure, but it also worked wonders at killing you slowly. Kidney failure, brain damage, and the slow corrosion of your body from within were just the small print in the beauty contract. Now, if you've ever stared at a modern foundation bottle that proudly boasts paraben-free, sulfate-free, cruelty-free, and thought, good, I'm safe, remember that 400 years ago the label might as well have said, now with extra neurological collapse. It makes those tiny warning notes about SPF expiration dates look adorably harmless. The woman smiles faintly at her reflection in a warped bronze mirror, as if trying to convince herself the pain is worth it. Her lips, once a natural shade, have been painted with a concoction of vermilion, which, for the record, is mercury sulfide. That's right, mercury. The same substance we now avoid touching in broken thermometers like it's liquid demon juice. Back then, though, it was the height of sophistication. You can almost hear her whisper, "Does this shade say noblewoman, or slow and inevitable decline?" The smell of the vermilion paste mixes with the lead foundation, creating an aroma that can only be described as chemical apocalypse. Your nose begs for mercy. You want to open a window, but this is the 16th century, and ventilation isn't exactly a priority. Instead, smoke from a nearby brazier of burning herbs fills the air, meant to mask the stench of sickness and filth. It fails. Miserably. Her skin is already blistering in places, but she dabs on more paste with the determination of someone preparing for an audience with royalty. You can almost respect it, in the same way you respect someone today who insists on wearing 6-inch heels to a concert. Yes, you look stunning, but at what cost? The blistering, the bruised toes, the inability to walk without sounding like a collapsing robot. All for the fleeting approval of strangers. Some things really don't change. The attendant steps back, admiring her handiwork. The lady now resembles a porcelain doll, carved by someone who secretly hated porcelain dolls. You half expect her to topple over, stiff and fragile, shattering on the stone floor. But she rises gracefully, adjusting her gown, and for a moment she looks radiant. Not radiant like the sun, of course, but radiant like a candle about to sputter out in a drafty room. Your eyes wander to a tray nearby, piled with powders and oils. One container is labeled with strange, curling script, an early form of branding, if you will. Inside, a powder glitters faintly. Curious, you lean closer. The attendant notices and smirks. "Arsenic," she says casually, as though announcing the day's soup flavor. Yes, arsenic. Another staple of historical beauty care. Sprinkle a little in your face powder, and voiled, instant luminous complexion. Sprinkle a little too much, and voiled. Your funeral procession leaves in 3 days. You can't help but think about modern influencer skincare lines. Imagine scrolling Instagram and seeing, "New drop from Kylie Arsenic Glow, the powder that really kills," with 1,000 fire emojis. Honestly, it doesn't feel far-fetched. The woman leans toward you, her face only inches away now, and you see the fine cracks in her painted mask. Her breath is sour, tinged with the metallic taste of slow poisoning. You flinch, but she doesn't notice. She's too busy studying her own reflection, eyes glassy, smile fixed. It's chilling, really. Beneath the white mask, beneath the rouge and the powder, you can sense the exhaustion, the pain. Yet society insists this is beauty. So beauty it shall be, even if it eats her alive. Stepping away from her, you find yourself in another room. Here, younger girls sit in a row, their faces bare for now. Their mothers fuss over them, dipping cloths into jars of strange, smelling liquids. You recognize the odor instantly. Vinegar. Sharp and acidic. Mixed with lead, of course. Because why stop at one deadly ingredient when you can double down? The girls whimper as the paste is rubbed onto their cheeks. Their mothers shush them. Pain is beauty, they say. You've probably heard that phrase tossed around in gyms or waxing salons today. But trust me, in this era it was less motivational slogan, more death sentence. One of the girls catches your gaze, eyes wide and wet. She looks about 12. Her lips tremble as her mother applies the thick white paste. You want to say something, to stop it, but you can't. Time travelers aren't meant to meddle, after all. You're here to witness, to smell, to gag quietly in the corner. That's your curse. Outside the chamber, the world hums with life. Horses clatter over cobblestones, vendors shout about their wares, and the scent of roasting meat mingles with sewage. Yet even here, beauty rituals whisper through the crowd. You pass a stall selling powders and creams, the merchant extolling their virtues with the enthusiasm of a modern infomercial host. "Look younger! Shine brighter! Be admired by all!" he cries. He forgets to mention the part where you vomit blood in your sleep. Small oversight. You pause by the stall, examining one jar labeled with symbols of alchemy. The merchant leans in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "This one is special. Ground from real nightshade berries." You raise an eyebrow. Nightshade, the plant so toxic it can kill with just a few berries. Put a drop in your eyes. He continues, and they will sparkle like stars. You nearly choke. Yes, indeed, the infamous belladonna drops. Women in Renaissance Italy dripped deadly nightshade, juice into their eyes to dilate their pupils, creating what was considered an alluring, dew-eyed look. Essentially, they were giving themselves chronic blurred vision for the sake of beauty. You glance at the merchant's own eyes. Cloudy, rimmed with red. He smiles proudly, a salesman who clearly samples his own wares. It's like if today's car salesman tried to convince you of safety features while wearing 3 casts and a neck brace. Not reassuring. Back then, though, those wide, glossy eyes were the peak of allure. Never mind the fact that women using belladonna could barely see the men they were supposed to be seducing. Imagine going on a Tinder date today, pupils blown wide like a startled cat, unable to read the menu because your eyes are busy being sexy. Some things you just can't unsee, except, well, in their case, they literally couldn't. You leave the stall before the merchant tries to sell you something that might make your hair glow in the dark. The street outside bustles with a strange sort of life. The kind that always seems to hum beneath cities in any century gossip. Bargains, whispers, and someone always trying to sell you something you didn't ask for. A child runs past with a half-eaten loaf of bread, chased by a vendor waving a wooden spoon in fury. You can't help but grin. Some things really don't change. Swap the loaf for a pack of chips, and the spoon for mall security, and you're basically watching modern life on replay. Turning a corner, you're drawn to another scene. A small group of women huddle together, their hands busy with something that looks suspiciously like melted wax. One of them dips a strip of cloth into the mixture and applies it to another woman's arm. She winces. A quick yank, and the woman yelps loudly enough to startle a passing donkey. Waxing, it seems, is not a modern invention after all. The others giggle, though it's the kind of laughter that borders on hysteria, like soldiers bonding before battle. Beauty rituals in this era weren't about spa days and cucumber water. They were endurance tests. But unlike the overpriced waxing salons of today, the concoction they're using here is likely a blend of resin, oil, and something vaguely flammable. You half expect the poor woman to burst into flames mid-process. You think of modern beauty influencers describing their burning sensation from a trendy new serum. Imagine telling them, yes, but at least your face didn't literally catch on fire. The woman endures, and the group admires the smooth patch of skin with awe, as though she's been transformed into a goddess. They whisper about how such smoothness will please her husband, how it will make her appear youthful, fertile, desirable. She nods through the pain, teeth clenched. You can almost hear the echo of every person who's ever said, no pain, no gain, while torturing themselves in the name of beauty. Whether it's waxing, high heels, or corsets, history has always had a way of turning discomfort into fashion. Moving on, you find yourself in yet another chamber, this one darker, lit by a single lamp. The air is heavy with the smell of burning herbs, and something more sinister. A young woman sits in the corner, her face hidden beneath a cloth. The healer, or beautician, depending on how generous you're feeling, carefully peels the cloth away, revealing skin reddened and raw. Your stomach churns. This is no simple mask. It's a concoction made of quicklime and vinegar, applied to peel away imperfections. Essentially, she's exfoliating her face with acid and chalk. Her skin glistens, wet and trembling, as though it's trying to breathe on its own. The healer nods approvingly. You'll be beautiful, she murmurs, once it heals. The girl doesn't respond. Her eyes are glassy with tears, and her hands clutch at her skirts. You can't help but think of modern chemical peels, the kind where people willingly burn the top layer of their skin off for the sake of glow. At least today's versions are done in clean clinics, with recovery serums and professionals who aren't grinding their tools on the same stone they just used to cut onions. Progress, I suppose. The girl flinches as the air touches her raw skin. You almost flinch with her. You can see the appeal, though, in a twisted way. When it heals, the redness will fade, and what's left will be fresh, unblemished skin. But at what cost? Infection lurks around every corner here. A single nick or cut could invite in a swarm of invisible killers. You glance at the healer's tools, and your modern brain screams at the lack of sterilization. These implements look like they've just been rinsed in water that would make today's public bathrooms seem sparkling clean. The healer reaches for another jar and dabs something onto the girl's wounds. It smells pungent, sharp, earthy. You lean closer, only to realize it's a paste made from animal dung mixed with herbs. Apparently, someone once decided that excrement had restorative properties for the skin. You want to gag, but you hold it back because, hey, time travel etiquette. Still, you're already drafting the Yelp review in your head. 0 stars. Used cow dung on my face. Did not enjoy. Would not recommend. As you turn away, you catch sight of another woman nearby, brushing her hair vigorously. Except, brush is a generous term. The tool in her hand is more of a carved wooden comb with jagged teeth, tugging and ripping at her scalp. Strands of hair snap and fall with each stroke, littering the floor. Her hair is smeared with a thick, oily substance that smells like rancid butter. Lard, perhaps, mixed with herbs. It's meant to make the hair shine and stay in place. You can't help but think of modern hair gel commercials promising 24-hour hold. At least modern gel doesn't attract rats in the night. Well, not usually. The woman smiles proudly, smoothing her greasy locks into an elaborate coil. You can see the appeal. The hairstyle is towering, dramatic, impressive. But you can also see lice crawling at the edges, tiny soldiers marching through the battlefield of her hair. She doesn't flinch. Lice were such a normal part of life here that most people simply endured them. The hair oil only made the problem worse. But fashion doesn't care about practicality. Fashion never has. You reach up, instinctively scratching your own head, and immediately regret it. The power of suggestion is cruel. The woman pats her oily coiffure one last time and nods, satisfied. Somewhere in the shadows, you swear you hear a rat squeak approvingly. The deeper you walk into this strange parade of beautification, the more you realize that suffering wasn't just an occasional byproduct of beauty. It was beauty. You step into a narrow room lined with polished copper mirrors. Women stand before them, dabbing at their skin with powders that shimmer faintly in the lamplight. At first, you think it's just another variant of lead or arsenic. But no, this is crushed pearl, mixed with honey and occasionally ground bone. Luxurious, certainly. Harmless. Not exactly. You'd think sprinkling gemstones onto your face would make you feel like royalty. Instead, it makes you feel like a walking jewelry store. One sneeze away from choking on your own makeup. One woman leans over and explains, her tone matter. Of fact, pearls bring purity, strength, and eternal youth. She smiles, her teeth brown and crumbling. Eternal youth. Perhaps eternal dental decay. Definitely. You nod politely. Even though your brain screams that covering your face in ground seashells sounds less like a beauty ritual and more like a punishment Poseidon would hand out. Imagine if today's skincare brands marketed crushed oyster shells as an exfoliant. Oh wait, they already do. History doesn't repeat itself. It just rebrands with sleeker packaging and a higher price tag. You wander further and find a woman dipping a slender brush into a pot of black liquid. With careful precision, she lines her eyes, painting her lashes until they gleam like polished onyx. At first glance, it's striking. The stark contrast makes her gaze seem deeper, more commanding. But the smell tells another story. Sharp, metallic, earthy. You recognize it instantly. Coal, a mixture of soot, burnt almonds, and sometimes lead sulfide. Ancient Egyptians adored it, and the trend spread like wildfire. Sure, it gave the eyes a dramatic allure, but it also delivered a slow trickle of toxins right into the bloodstream. Nothing says glamour like slowly poisoning yourself every morning before breakfast. The woman bats her lashes proudly, and you can't deny the effect. It is mesmerizing. You can almost understand why this practice survived for millennia. Still, you can't help but think of modern eyeliner ads with their promises of smudge-proof drama. Back then, the smudge wasn't the problem. It was the slow march of neurological damage. Honestly, mascara clumps don't sound so bad now, do they? She leans closer to the mirror, adjusting the dark rims of her eyes, when a sudden tear wells up. She blinks rapidly, smearing the black liquid across her cheek. The smudge makes her look less like a queen, and more like someone who's just sobbed through a Nicholas Sparks movie marathon. You stifle a laugh, but she doesn't notice. She wipes her cheek, reapplies the poison, and carries on. Dedication, thy name is beauty. You step back, nearly colliding with another figure, an older woman, her face ghostly pale, but her cheeks flushed in an unnatural scarlet. You tilt your head. The rouge is thick, uneven, and just a little too bright, like someone has rubbed strawberries straight onto her skin. Except it isn't strawberries. It's cinnabar, a mineral form of mercury sulfide, ground into powder and mixed with oil. Yes, more mercury. At this point, you're beginning to suspect that the ancient beauty industry was secretly sponsored by the Grim Reaper. The woman sighs contentedly, patting her cheeks with her fingertips as if checking for glow. She turns to you with a toothless smile. Pretty, isn't it? She asks. You nod. Because what else can you do? Telling her it looks like she's just face planted into a toxic waste dump probably won't go over well. It's striking, sure. But in the same way a neon warning sign is striking, eye-catching, but you don't want to touch it. In that moment, you realize something chilling. These women aren't fools. They know it hurts. They know it burns. They know people cough, faint, and sometimes never wake up. But beauty is power, and in a world where a woman's worth is often judged by her appearance, that power is worth the gamble. The same trade off echoes through centuries. Health for desirability, safety for status. A cruel bargain, but one that history forced into their hands. And then you hear it, laughter. Not the light, happy laughter of friends sharing gossip, but a kind of sharp, mocking cackle. You turn and see a young maid holding a jar, whispering to her peers. She dips her finger into the jar and paints her lips with a deep, glossy red. They giggle, covering their mouths as though sharing a scandalous secret. The lipstick shines brilliantly in the low light, but the scent is off, sweet, almost metallic. You realize with a jolt what it is: crushed cochineal insects, mixed with oils and, occasionally, toxic metals for depth of color. Yes, these girls are painting their lips with bugs, and not the trendy, eco-friendly protein powder kind of bugs, the crushed, oozing, straight from the desert kind. You stare, horrified, but also fascinated. The color is vivid, beautiful even. You imagine a modern influencer gushing over a new organic line of lip stains made with natural insects, with a discount code attached. It doesn't even sound that far off, does it? The line between grotesque and glamorous has always been thin. The maid notices your expression and smirks. Don't look so shocked, she teases. Beauty requires sacrifice. She puckers her lips dramatically, earning more giggles from her companions. Sacrifice, indeed. Though in her case it'll probably be gastrointestinal distress when she licks her lips by accident. As the room fills with chatter, powders, and smoke, your head begins to ache. The combination of lead, mercury dung, soot, and crushed beetles makes the air heavy, toxic, suffocating. Your lungs protest. Your stomach churns. You want to step outside to gulp down fresh air. But curiosity holds you here, glued to the horror and wonder of it all. This is not just beauty. This is ritual, performance, identity. To witness it is to understand the very essence of how humans chase ideals, even when those ideals are deadly. And then, just as you're about to slip away, the door creaks open. A new figure enters, her hair covered in a veil, her movements deliberate and regal. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to her. You feel it instantly. This woman is different. The attendants bow, the maidens hush, even the merchants lean in with anticipation. She removes her veil slowly, and what you see makes your breath catch. Her face glistens unnaturally, stretched taut, shimmering like polished wax. She smiles faintly, and the room seems to exhale in awe. You can't quite place what's wrong until you realize it. Her skin is covered not in powder or paint, but in a thin layer of raw egg whites dried into a sheen. It pulls at her skin, tightening it until her features look sculpted, flawless, unnatural. The effect is stunning, yes, but she looks less like a woman and more like a statue come to life. You stare, fascinated and disturbed. Egg whites, of all things, used as a natural facelift. Effective, sure, but one wrong move, and she'd smell like breakfast. She meets your gaze briefly, her eyes hard and glittering beneath the taut mask. In that moment, you can't help but wonder, how far will this go? What ritual comes next? What sacrifice will beauty demand in this never-ending war between flesh and fashion? The woman with the egg-white mask doesn't move for a long time. She stands still, porcelain stiff, letting her face set like plaster on a wall. The attendants watch in reverent silence, as though witnessing a holy ritual instead of a breakfast experiment gone too far. And then, slowly, she exhales. A careful, delicate breath, as though even moving her mouth risks cracking the farce aid. You can almost hear the eggshell tension in the air. A ripple of admiration passes through the crowd, whispers of awe, ageless, eternal. The woman turns her head slightly, and you catch the faintest creak, like a violin string under pressure. You wince, imagining the brittle mask breaking mid-sentence, yolk running down her chin, and the illusion ruined forever. Beauty, it seems, is one long performance, a balancing act between grace and grotesque. And isn't that true today? Think about contouring tutorials, 20-step Korean skincare routines, or those terrifying silicone face masks sold online. We may not be smearing bird droppings across our cheeks anymore, at least not in most countries. But we still worship the impossible. Our shelves are crammed with serums that promise to erase decades overnight. And yes, some of us still sleep with green goop on our faces, hoping to wake up looking like we've aged backwards. The only difference: now it comes in a sleek glass bottle with a French-sounding name. As the egg-faced woman takes her seat, another ritual begins in the corner. You notice a girl crouched on a stool, her hair hanging damp down her back. An attendant kneels beside her with a small clay jar. The lid comes off, and instantly, your nose is assaulted with the sharp stench of ammonia. Urine. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, literal human urine. The attendant dips a comb into the jar and runs it slowly through the girl's hair, coating each strand. You gag before you can stop yourself, your throat burning from the smell. The girl, however, sits proudly, eyes fixed ahead, as though enduring a trial by fire. Her hair darkens, gleams unnaturally, and soon, despite the smell, it shines like polished obsidian. The women watching murmur their approval. Glossy, lustrous hair is worth any price. You press a sleeve to your face to block the stink, your stomach lurching. And yet, part of you can't deny it. Her hair does look perfect. You whisper to yourself, half in disbelief. So that's where all the shampoo commercials got their inspiration. A moment later, you add Pain Pro V. Now with extra PP. If you ever wanted proof that modern marketing is just repackaged horror, well, here it is. The girl's mother beams, whispering that her daughter will surely attract a wealthy husband now. You realize that what you're watching isn't just a beauty trick. It's an investment, a gamble, an act of social survival. Clean hair meant opportunity, power, the chance to climb a rung higher in a brutal world. Wouldn't you sit through the stench if it promised you a better life? The thought chills you more than the smell. But the worst is yet to come. In the farthest corner of the room, under dim torchlight, you hear soft chanting. A woman reclines on a couch, her hands trembling as two attendants press something sharp against her skin. You edge closer, your curiosity overpowering your caution. At first, you think it's tattooing, but no. The attendants aren't drawing designs. They're pricking small holes into the skin of her cheeks, her forehead, even her eyelids. Blood wells up, glistening. And then, with unsettling calm, the attendants rub a powdery paste into the wounds. You feel your stomach twist as you realize what it is: a mixture of herbs, soot, and, judging by the metallic tang in the air, more mercury. The woman flinches, gasps, but doesn't stop them. Beauty through scarring, ritualized wounds that will darken into permanent marks. Tattoos disguised as cosmetics, carved into the flesh itself. The attendants murmur that it will make her features pop, as though permanence was just another step in the makeup routine. The woman bites her lip, eyes brimming with tears. She whispers, "Pain is passing. Beauty is forever." You want to shout that she's wrong, that the pain is seeping into her very blood, that the forever she's imagining will be much shorter than she expects. But you bite your tongue. History has already spoken for her. You step back, the room spinning with the fumes of dung, urine, mercury, soot, and blood. Every ritual blurs together in a haze of devotion and desperation. The message is clear: beauty was never soft. Beauty was carved, poisoned, burned, swallowed, and blood. The price wasn't just discomfort. It was your health, your sanity, your very life. And yet, people paid it willingly, generation after generation. As though there was no other option. You feel a shiver crawl up your spine. This isn't just history. It's a mirror. We may no longer rub bird droppings on our cheeks or soak our hair in pee, but we've invented Botox needles, acid peels, and surgeries that slice bone to reshape it. The rituals evolve, but the hunger never dies. The question gnaws at you: have we really moved forward, or just changed costumes? The room fades, the laughter and whispers dissolving into silence. You blink, and the walls around you shift. The torchlight dims into candlelight, and suddenly you're somewhere else entirely. A chamber lit by flickering flames, the smell of incense and blood lingering in the air. Outside, the faint toll of bells. You've left the powder rooms, and entered another chapter of beauty's disturbing story. Your hand brushes against a table, and you realize it's laid out not with powders and pastes, but with scalpels, hooks, and vials of dark liquid. Beauty here is about to get sharper. You hear footsteps approaching, steady, purposeful. Someone clears their throat, and a voice, calm and commanding, says, "Shall we begin the operation?" The voice that spoke, calm, steady, unnervingly confident, belongs to a man in long robes, the kind that sway with every step as though they're more for ceremony than comfort. His hands, though, are bare, veins visible, nails trimmed with surgical precision. He looks less like a healer and more like an artisan about to work on clay. Only here, the clay screams. You shift your weight as he approaches the table. On it lies a young woman, pale as parchment, her eyes wide with something caught between fear and devotion. Her fingers clench the linen beneath her, knuckles blanched. She has come willingly. You can see it in the way she forces her breath to slow, as though rehearsing calm for this moment. The surgeon, though the word feels too modern, too clean, picks up a hook, turning it casually in his hand. He glances at the watching crowd of attendants, noblewomen and curious onlookers. "We remove what nature gave too much of," he announces, his voice resonant, "and restore harmony." The phrase, "restore harmony," makes you flinch. You've heard that same excuse used today in glossy clinic ads. Refine your natural beauty, balance your features, correct imperfections. Nothing has changed except the lighting. The woman on the table exhales sharply as the hook slides into her nostril. You gasp before she does. With steady, deliberate motion, the surgeon tugs, stretching cartilage outward, then snips with a curved blade. A thin bead of blood trickles down. He tilts his head, appraising his work like a sculptor shaving marble. Around you, women murmur with fascination rather than horror. A smaller nose meant refinement, elegance, superiority. A large nose, well, let's just say the poor woman would have been whispered about in corridors until the walls themselves blushed. The surgeon wipes his blade with cloth, his expression tranquil. You want to shake him. This is no nose job in a sterile clinic with anesthesia and neat little sutures. This is raw flesh, blood on the floor. A face that will scar, if it doesn't fester and rot first. And yet the crowd sees only the promise that she will rise from this bed closer to perfection, closer to acceptance. You lean closer, whispering under your breath like a scandalous commentator at a modern awards show. "And here we have the world's earliest rhinoplasty, no Botox required, but tetanus is complimentary." The woman groans, her lips quivering, but she doesn't stop him. Pain in this chamber is proof of dedication. And just when you think the ordeal is over, the surgeon gestures for another tool, a flat, heated iron rod. Your breath catches. He doesn't mean to soothe the wound. He means to cauterize it. The hiss when metal meets skin echoes louder than any scream. You bite the inside of your cheek, unable to look away, even as the acrid stench of burning flesh coils into your nostrils. The room seems to inhale with her. And then silence. The surgeon steps back, content, as though he's signed his name on his masterpiece. You stagger, gripping your chest. The attendants rush forward with cloths, with herbs, with whispered reassurances. And you can't help but laugh. A bitter, horrified laugh. Because haven't we all done some version of this? Maybe not with iron rods and open wounds, but with waxing strips that rip skin, or with lasers that zap away hair follicles. Technology has upgraded, sure, but the pain equation remains the same: burn yourself a little, bleed yourself a little, all for the fleeting applause of, "You look good." The chamber doesn't stop. Another woman replaces the first, this one trembling visibly but forcing a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. This time, the focus isn't her nose, it's her eyelids. The surgeon explains that heavy lids make one look sleepy, disinterested old. Lighter lids, lifted eyes. Those make a woman glow with eternal youth. You mutter to yourself? Congratulations, you've just discovered blepharoplasty 1, 500 years too early. The attendants hold her still as the surgeon takes a blade, sharper than the last, and traces along the delicate folds of skin. You feel your own eyes water instinctively, your body recoiling in sympathy. The slice is clean, but the gasp that follows is ragged. He removes tiny slivers of flesh, as if trimming a garment, and then presses herbs to stanch the bleeding. The woman shakes, tears rolling down her cheeks. And yet, the onlookers nod approvingly, whispering that she will wake tomorrow, bright-eyed, radiant, like the dawn. You think of modern influencers posting photos captioned, "Just a little touch-up, nothing major," while sitting under hospital lights. History, it seems, has always had a filter. And then comes the strangest ritual of all reshaping ears. You didn't think ears could be considered offensive until you see it. A man, not a woman this time, steps forward, his ears protruding slightly from the sides of his head. The surgeon shakes his head as though confronted with an insult to humanity itself. Too large, too foolish. With swift brutality, he slices away the outer edge, reshaping the ear into something smaller, tidier, less obtrusive. Blood pours, and the man's jaw locks as he suppresses a scream. You nearly choke on your disbelief. Imagine risking your life for ears. If Instagram had existed back then, this man would have been the guy constantly tilting his head just right so nobody saw the unedited side. But in this chamber, every detail matters. A crooked nose, a drooping lid, a large ear. These are social death sentences. The surgeon isn't just altering faces. He's sculpting survival. The longer you stand in this room, the more oppressive it becomes. The candlelight flickers off blades, slick with blood. The stench of burned skin mingles with herbs and incense, failing to mask it. And you realize that beauty here is not paint, not powder, not a mask you can wash away at night. Beauty here is written into flesh, with knives as pens and scars as punctuation. Your hands tremble, though you try to laugh it off. So next time someone tells you, beauty is pain, remind them, at least today, pain usually comes with anesthesia and Spotify in the background. The chamber darkens, the faces blur, and you feel yourself pulled back, as though the very walls are tired of watching this theatre. The whispers fade, replaced by a softer murmur. Not the hiss of cauterized skin, but the rustle of silk, the clink of glass. You blink, and suddenly you're elsewhere. Gone is the surgeon's table. You now stand in a boudoir of bottles, tinctures, and perfumes. The air is sweeter, almost cloying. For a moment, you think you've escaped the knives, until you realize the poisons waiting here are no less sharp. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Sweet, yes, but suffocatingly so, like someone sprayed an entire bottle of perfume in a locked elevator. Your throat tightens, your eyes water, and for a terrifying moment you wonder if you'll be the first time traveler to perish not by sword or plague, but by too much rosewater. Every surface glitters with bottles. Glass vials catch the candlelight, their contents shimmering in shades of pearl, amber, and midnight blue. Tiny boxes lined with velvet reveal powders so fine they rise in little clouds when touched, floating like ghostly smoke. To anyone else, this might look enchanting, like stepping into a fairy tale apothecary. But you know better. If the surgical chamber was a butcher's stall, this is a poisoner's pantry dressed in lace. A noblewoman stands at the center of it all, her face already pale, but not pale enough. She leans toward a mirror framed in ivory, dips a brush into a white paste, and smears it delicately across her cheeks. You lean closer. The smell sharpens. Vinegar. Metal, you realize with a sick twist that it's lead. Pure, heavy, toxic lead. She hums while she works, oblivious to the way her skin flakes beneath the layer, oblivious to how her blood is slowly becoming a toxic soup. And yet, when she turns to the others, they gasp in admiration. Her complexion, once faintly rosy, now glows with the cold smoothness of porcelain. She has become a statue of herself. You whisper half in awe, half in horror, "Congratulations, madam. You're the original Snapchat filter." Of course, you know the consequences. Rotting gums, hair falling out, breath that stinks of metal, skin peeling away until bone shows beneath. But in this room, none of that exists. Here, she is divine. and divine beauty is worth a slow, painful death. Across the room, another woman stirs a goblet of something golden. She sips delicately, grimacing at the bitter aftertaste. You don't even need to ask. You know it's arsenic. Not a lot, just a little. Enough to purify the blood to keep the skin luminous and pale. You shudder, realizing you've just witnessed history's most disturbing version of a juice cleanse. One of the attendants explains proudly. It draws out the fire within, cools the complexion. You bite your tongue to keep from blurting. Yes, it also draws out your pulse rate until it flatlines. And then, as if the lead and arsenic weren't enough, another chest is opened. Inside vials of mercury. They sparkle like liquid silver, mesmerizing, tempting. The women dip brushes into it, painting their lips until they gleam like wet rubies. You feel your stomach turn. Mercury, quicksilver, they called it, slips through the skin, into the blood, gnawing at the brain. You wonder how many of these women forgot their names by 40. How many went mad while still insisting they looked radiant. And yet, in this room madness is a distant rumor. Here lips shine, cheeks glow, and death is just the price of fashion. Imagine, you mutter. Today we complain about lipstick with too much parabens. Back then, the ingredient list was literally poison, and more poison. Vegan, gluten-free, no, just brain-melting mercury. But it wasn't only the women. No. The men have their place in this lethal theatre too. A nobleman enters, his cheeks powdered, so thickly you swear you could blow the dust off like flour on bread. His wig towers above his head, curls cascading, powdered with flour starch, and whatever else was handy. The scent of lavender oil clings to him, but beneath it, you catch the unmistakable odor of mildew. The wig isn't fresh. It's reused, reworn, crawling with lice and fleas. He tips his hat at the ladies, who titter behind their hands. You have to admire it, the confidence of strutting in with a dead rat's nest on your head. And yet, in this era, he's not ridiculous, he's irresistible. His powdered face and scented wig scream wealth, refinement, superiority. You, however, can't resist the jab. And here we see the ancestor of modern dating apps. Swipe right if you like a man who smells like lavender, but also possibly like soup left out too long. The women lean in, admiring his ghostly pale complexion. Pale meant privilege, after all. It meant you didn't toil in fields under the sun. It meant silk, servants, leisure. But you can't stop staring at the powder gathering in the creases of his skin. The way his lips twitch as though they're numb. Because you know what's inside that powder? Crushed minerals, chalk, even arsenic dust itself. This man is slowly embalming himself alive, one flirtatious smile at a time. And just when you think you've seen enough poison for a lifetime, the boudoir reveals its final horror: perfumes. Bottles upon bottles, fragrances so strong they overwhelm the air. Roses, violets, musk, ambergris, the last of which, you suddenly recall, is whale vomit. Yes, whale vomit, treasured like gold, dabbled lovingly behind ears. You almost choke laughing. So next time someone brags about their 200 designer perfume, remember, history's luxury scent was essentially eau de wild burp. But it wasn't just about smelling sweet. Perfume was armor. In an age when sewage ran in the streets, when people bathed perhaps twice a year, scent was survival. To smell of roses meant you were untouchable, superior. To smell of yourself meant shame. And so they drowned themselves in fragrance, masking rot with sweetness, until the very air turned into syrup. You sway slightly. Dizzy, your lungs aching. The irony hits you hard. These people, in their quest to look and smell like gods, are poisoning themselves from every angle. Lead for the skin, arsenic for the blood, mercury for the lips, perfume to mask the decay. They look divine, but they are corpses in rehearsal. And yet, you can't look away. Because beneath the horror, there's something heartbreakingly human. The desperate desire to be admired. The fear of being overlooked. The hope that beauty could be a shield against loneliness, rejection, gossip. You glance into the mirror on the vanity, catching your own reflection. For a moment your face looks pale too, your lips glimmer faintly silver, your skin powdered white. You blink and it's gone, but the image lingers, making you shiver. The women laugh, their glasses clink, the men adjust their wigs. This is beauty, this is power. This is the theatre of poison. And as the candles gutter low, you feel yourself pulled again, tugged by the unseen thread of time. The laughter fades, the perfume dissipates, and all that remains is a sharp metallic taste on your tongue. Darkness surrounds you. Then, faintly, you hear a scrape. A rasping, grinding sound. It grows louder, closer, until sparks flash in the gloom. Blades being sharpened, not for noses this time, not for lips. For something far, far more intimate. You inhale sharply. The air smells of iron. The ground is cold beneath your feet. And as the first glimmer of torchlight flickers, you realize beauty has left the face and entered the body. A new chamber awaits. A new ritual. Something carved deeper, hidden further. And you think, not for the first time tonight? Maybe you should have just stayed home with a face mask and Netflix. The scrape of blades still rings in your ears, a metallic whisper promising something harsher than powders and perfumes. The air grows heavy, damp, and when your eyes adjust, you find yourself in a new chamber. At first glance, it looks almost like a tailor's workshop. Mannequins, fabrics, long strips of cloth draped from hooks. But step closer, and the illusion shatters. These are not garments meant to drape. They are weapons meant to bind. On the tables lie corsets of whalebone and steel, leather straps thick as ropes, shoes so tiny they could cradle a doll's feet. The atmosphere hums with restraint. Here, beauty doesn't just decorate the body, it reshapes it, sometimes permanently, sometimes fatally. A woman enters, her maid trailing behind like a soldier at attention. The maid lifts a corset, stiff and glittering with stays. You've seen corsets in museum cases before, under glass, neatly labeled. They looked almost harmless, relics of fashion. But in this room, alive, the corset is terrifying. It looms like a predator, ready to devour the ribs within its grip. The lady steps into it, arms raised. The maid pulls the laces tighter. You hear it before you see it. The creak of fabric, the groan of whalebone, the hiss of air forced from lungs. The woman's waist shrinks inch by inch, until her body seems less human and more wasp. You flinch at the sound. Not fabric tearing, but something inside her shifting, grinding. Ribs pressing inward, organs jostling for space. The maid ties off the laces with satisfaction. The lady takes a shallow breath, shoulders back, chin lifted. She smiles, elegant, refined, unyielding. And yet, you can't stop thinking. She looks like she's one sneeze away from snapping a rib through her spleen. You whisper conspiratorially to the invisible listener walking with you. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the original shapewear. Forget Spanx. This was Spanx with a side of organ rearrangement. The woman glides toward a mirror, her figure now impossibly slender. But you notice how she moves not with ease, but with calculation. Each step carefully measured, as if she's balancing on a knife's edge. And in a way, she is. Doctors of her day wrote warnings about tight lacing, displaced livers, collapsed lungs, miscarriages. But such warnings were brushed aside, drowned beneath the applause of society. A narrow waist wasn't just fashion, it was morality. To cinch oneself was to prove discipline, virtue, control. You lean closer, drawn into her reflection. Her lips part as if to speak, but all you hear is the faint whistle of strained breath. The maid, ever vigilant, dabs perfume on her temples. The ritual is complete. She is suffocating. She is triumphant. And then the world shifts again. The corsets fade, the chamber tilts, and suddenly your feet sink into something soft. Grass, dirt, the air tastes of smoke and dust. You blink against the light, and there they are. Tiny embroidered shoes scattered across the ground, delicate as petals. At first you think they are toys. Child's slippers, maybe, abandoned after play. But then you see them on feet. Women shuffle by their steps, small, careful, each movement accompanied by the faint crunch of bones long ago broken. You're in China, centuries past, watching the practice of footbinding unfold. A girl sits on a low stool, her mother crouched before her with strips of cloth. The girl winces as her toes are folded under, pressed against the sole. Her foot, once natural and wide, is bent like a bow. The mother wraps tightly, tighter still, until the flesh bulges. The girl cries out, but the mother hushes her, tying the final knot with grim determination. It is horrifying. It is intimate. You feel the ache in your own bones just watching. And yet, around you, no one protests. Because this isn't torture in their eyes. It's transformation. The girl, if she survives the process, will one day be desirable, marriageable, praised for her lotus feet. You want to scream, to intervene, to rip the cloth away. But you can't. You're a ghost in this memory, cursed to witness without power. The girl limps when she stands, clutching her mother's arm for balance. And you realize with a chill this limp will never leave her. She is being broken to be beautiful. You murmur, voice low with disbelief. All this, just so her feet could fit inside a shoe the size of an iPhone. But the girl totters forward, a doll-like sway that society reads as graceful. But you see the cost, the flesh bruising beneath the bindings, the bones splintering into unnatural curves. The pain will never end. It will only deepen as years pass, as the foot deforms fully into a shape desired not by nature, but by culture. Around you, the marketplace bustles. Men glance approvingly at bound feet peeking from embroidered slippers. Songs are sung comparing small feet to poetry, to flowers. And you realize, with a sinking heart, how easy it is for cruelty to be dressed up as beauty, for pain to be praised as elegance. A man brushes past, muttering about how a woman with unbound feet is like a horse unbroken. You bristle. The words sting, not just for her, but for every body reshaped by the demand to please. Your voice drips with sarcasm. Ah yes, because nothing says romance like permanently disabling someone's skeleton. Shakespeare, eat your heart out. And as the crowd fades, as the bound feet shuffle into the distance, you are pulled once again. This time the air is salt, sharp, tinged with sweat. You stagger forward into the deck of a ship, sails snapping overhead. Sailors chant, their bodies bare to the sun, their tattoos vivid against skin. But it's not the tattoos themselves that draw your eye, it's the scars. Ritual scars, cut into flesh with blades, rubbed with ash to raise proud welts. Here, body-altering beauty takes yet another form, the deliberate carving of skin into patterns of identity, pride, and belonging. You run your hand over one sailor's shoulder, not touching, but almost. The scars ripple under sunlight, a language etched in pain. He grins, proud of the marks. Unlike corsets or bound feet, this ritual carries no shame. It is not hidden. It is shouted in flesh. And yet, the knife is still the same. The blood is still the same. The cost is still the same. You pause, heart racing, because the chamber of blades has expanded. What began as fashion has become ritual, religion, rebellion. The body itself is the canvas, cut, squeezed, reshaped. And there's no turning back now. You whisper to your unseen companion, conspiratorial as ever. So next time you complain about your gym trainer making you do burpees, just remember, it could be worse. They could be strapping you into a corset until your pancreas files a complaint. The chant of sailors fades, the sound of surf recedes, and you are left standing in silence once more. Ahead the faint glow of fire beckons. Shadows move across it, long and thin, twisting. Not feet, not ribs. Something else. Something deeper, darker. The ritual continues. And it's about to get worse. The firelight grows sharper now, and with it comes the scent of smoke and singed flesh. At first you think you've stumbled into another ritual scarification, but the shadows moving before the fire are different this time. You squint and realize they are not scars, they are holes. A woman stands proudly, her earlobes stretched wide into loops large enough to hold carved discs of ivory. Her skin, long trained by weight and time, hangs like a delicate curtain around the ornament. You can see through the hole, the glow of firelight flickering inside it, like a window into her skull. It's mesmerizing and unsettling all at once. The crowd around her claps in approval as she places a larger disc into her lobe, wincing only slightly. Her beauty grows in proportion to the stretching of her skin. The wider the hole, the greater the allure. You lean closer, whispering as if letting your viewer in on a secret. So basically, this is the ancient version of gouged ears. Except instead of Hot Topic jewelry, it's an actual dinner plate hanging from your head. The woman smiles, proud, and you realize this isn't shameful here. This is strength. Pain endured is beauty earned. Around her, men boast of their own lip plates, enormous discs forcing their mouths into surreal shapes. To outsiders it might look grotesque alien, but within this community it is status, elegance, a visible measure of resilience. The fire pops, ash spirals upward, and with it your vision shifts again. This time you find yourself in a chamber that smells faintly of chemicals. Sharp, acrid, medical. A man lies stretched across a table, not bound by leather straps, but by society's strange expectations. This is the early 20th century, and beauty has marched into the operating room. Surgical scalpels gleam under gaslight. A doctor hovers above the patient, his mustache twitching with concentration. He is not repairing an injury, he is creating beauty. A nose deemed too large. Ears considered too prominent. Flesh sliced, sewn, molded anew. You feel your stomach knot. Here body-altering beauty has crossed into science, or at least a grotesque parody of it. In an age obsessed with symmetry and perfection, the knife is no longer a ritual object or cultural tool. It is clinical, detached, cold. The patient groans as the doctor stitches. Either hangs in the air, not quite enough to dull the pain. The result will be considered a triumph: a straighter nose, a more delicate jawline. But the cost, infections, botched surgeries, even death, is conveniently tucked away beneath white coats and medical jargon. You shake your head, muttering with a grim smile. So next time your friend brags about their Botox appointment, just remember they're participating in a tradition over a century old. Only difference is, today's surgeons have better lighting and fewer handlebar mustaches. The doctor steps back, admiring his work, as though the human body were clay to be reshaped at will. But you see the patient's pale face, the tight stitches, the swelling, and you know, beauty here has become industry, and industry rarely cares about the cost. The walls dissolve again, and suddenly you are hit by heat. Not chemical, but volcanic. The air smells of incense and sweat. A crowd gathers around a circle where men pierce their bodies with long metal rods, threading them through cheeks, tongues, even chests. Blood seeps, but they do not flinch. Their expressions are serene, transcendent. Here, beauty is pain made holy. The piercings are temporary, but the scars will remain, a badge of endurance. You can feel the crowd's reverence, the sense that the body is not just flesh, but a vessel to be tested, reshaped, even broken in the name of devotion and allure. One man pulls a blade slowly through his skin, then removes it without so much as a cry. The wound weeps, the crowd cheers. To them, his endurance is proof of spiritual beauty, a body aligned with something greater than comfort. You can't resist leaning in, whispering with dry humor. So the next time you whine about your nose piercing getting infected, remember. Somewhere, someone was casually threading a spear through their face and calling it Tuesday. The ritual fades, the bloodied ground giving way to something far colder. Stone walls, torches guttering. You recognize the place instantly: a medieval chamber, though not the kind adorned with banners or feasts. No, this is a darker corner of the castle, where beauty collides with cruelty. A noblewoman sits rigid in a chair while attendants apply a paste to her skin. It reeks of vinegar and quicklime. You recognize it with horror: a depilatory designed to strip hair, and, if left too long, strip flesh. She winces as the mixture burns, but forces a smile. Smooth, hairless skin is prized. Suffering is secondary. Her hands grip the chair so tightly her knuckles whiten. When the paste is finally scraped away, her skin is raw red, trembling with heat. Yet the attendants beam. She is flawless now, they say. Perfect. You mutter under your breath, unable to resist. Laser hair removal suddenly feels like a luxury spa day, doesn't it? The noblewoman stands, trembling slightly, and pulls her gown over the scorched skin. She will bear it with dignity. But you can see it. The agony lingering just beneath the silk. The irony is sharp: the very ritual meant to make her desirable leaves her unable to even sit comfortably. The torches flicker, and once again, you are pulled. This time you're surrounded by whispers, not screams. A Renaissance court. Ladies glide by with delicate waists, powdered faces, graceful bows. And then you see them: tiny patches of fabric glued to their skin. Beauty marks, false moles. At first harmless, playful. But then you notice another, and another. Each one covering something darker: scars, pockmarks. Wounds left by diseases like smallpox. These patches, called mouches, are both adornment and disguise. What began as fashion has become camouflage for bodies ravaged by illness. It's unsettling, this mingling of sickness and style. One lady catches you staring and lifts her chin proudly. To her, the patch is not shame, it is power. A symbol that she is still beautiful, even in decay. You whisper conspiratorially, basically, this was the original Instagram filter, only stickier. The court hums with laughter, music, elegance. But beneath it lies a truth too raw to ignore. Even when disease carved its mark into flesh, society demanded beauty. The patches are charming at a glance, but haunting when you look closer. And as the music fades, so too does the hall. You're left standing in silence once more, the echo of rituals trailing behind you. Corsets, bound feet, scarred skin, stretched flesh, pierced faces, burned limbs, disguised scars. Each culture, each century, finding new ways to declare, beauty is worth the body itself. You turn to your unseen companion, your listener, your fellow traveler, and you can't help but grin, tired but amused. And we thought wearing skinny jeans was uncomfortable. But even as the humor lingers, a shadow falls across your path. You realize these practices are not relics. They did not vanish with time. They evolved, sharpened, hid behind modern words like aesthetic and procedure. And somewhere ahead, in the chamber yet unseen, lies the proof that the line between beauty and cruelty is thinner than skin. The ground shifts, the air chills, and with a final whisper the chapter closes on a question. What happens when beauty rituals stop being cultural or fashionable and start being experiments on living bodies? The air is heavy with perfume, sweet, floral, cloying, but beneath it, something sharper creeps in. You cough quietly because your throat itches. The powder swirling around the room isn't dust from stone or parchment this time. It's cosmetic, and it is toxic. You blink through the haze and find yourself in a Renaissance chamber. The women here glow with pale faces, skin so white it seems carved from marble. At first glance, you think beautiful, but then you look closer. Their cheeks are stiff, cracking at the edges, fine fissures running across the surface of their powdered skin. A maid dabs a brush into a jar of brilliant white paste and applies it thickly to her mistress's face. The mixture shines wetly for a moment, then dries into a porcelain mask. You lean closer and recognize the ingredients: lead carbonate. Yes, lead. Smooth on the outside, corrosive beneath. Over time, it eats away at the very skin it is meant to perfect. One noblewoman turns to glance at you, her painted face flawless. But around her eyes, beneath the layers, you see sores beginning to bloom, raw flesh hidden under beauty's mask. And you realize this is not a look. This is a slow poisoning. You murmur quietly, as if sharing a secret in the candlelit hall. So next time your favorite influencer says, "My skincare routine will change your life," just be glad they don't mean end your life. The woman smiles politely at her mirror, ignoring the faint tremor in her hand. She dips a cloth into vinegar to smooth her complexion, though the acid only worsens the damage. Every application of powder tightens the mask, every removal tears more skin away. It is the ultimate irony beauty that slowly erases the very face it decorates. Your vision shimmers, and suddenly you're outside. The year is 18th century, and the powdered obsession has reached its climax. Faces powdered white, wigs dusted pale, cheeks painted scarlet. Men and women alike look like living porcelain dolls. From a distance it is dazzling. Up close it is suffocating. The streets are thick with clouds of powder as people pat it on with puffs. A carriage rattles by, leaving behind a ghostly trail. Even the air tastes chalky. You cough again, your tongue coated with the metallic tang of lead. You glance at one dashing gentleman strutting down the street, wig towering, face whiter than a funeral shroud. He looks impeccable, except for the missing eyebrows, which have been carefully painted back on with soot. His smile cracks, literally, as the lead stiffens around his lips. You whisper conspiratorially, this was basically the Snapchat filter of the 1700s. Only instead of digital, it slowly ate your skin off. But the most disturbing part isn't what you see, it's what you know. Behind closed doors, many of these powdered elites suffer tremors, hair loss, even madness. Lead creeps into the body like a thief in the night, stealing health in exchange for a moment of flawless complexion. And society applauds it. The vision fades, and suddenly the air feels colder, heavier. You are standing in a Victorian parlor, where glass jars glint on a polished vanity. Their labels are elegant, scripted, promising miraculous radium cream, arsenic wafers, mercury lotion. You freeze. Radianic, mercury. These are not cosmetics. These are weapons disguised as beauty aids. A young woman sits at the vanity, humming as she applies the luminous cream to her cheeks. It glows faintly in the lamplight, a soft greenish shimmer. To her, it is proof of vitality, radiance, health. To you, it is a death sentence in a jar. You want to shout, to knock the bottle away. But she smiles at her reflection, enchanted. She has no idea that the same cream that makes her glow will also rot her bones. Nearby, her friend pops a delicate wafer into her mouth, marketed as a miracle for clear skin. It dissolves sweetly. What she does not know, it is arsenic. The very poison used to kill rivals and unwanted husbands is now sold to her as a beauty tonic. You lean closer to your invisible listener, whispering with a grim chuckle. Imagine walking into Sephora and picking up a product literally labeled arsenic wafers for radiance. 5 stars on Amazon. Side effects: death. The women giggle, admiring their reflections, their cheeks faintly glowing under the gaslight. But beneath their beauty, their bodies are waging a silent war. Cells burning, nerves fraying, health unraveling. And all of it purchased willingly, packaged with ribbons and promises. The door creaks, and a man in a black coat enters, carrying a small contraption with wires. He is no doctor. Or perhaps he is, depending on how loose your definition of doctor is in this age. He announces proudly that his electrical device can rejuvenate skin, restore youth, even cure wrinkles. The women gasp with delight. Electricity! The marvel of the century! Who wouldn't want to be shocked into beauty? He places small electrodes against one woman's cheeks. She flinches as current runs through her face, her skin twitching involuntarily. The crowd claps. To them, it is science at work. To you it looks like torture dressed in the language of progress. The man beams, twirling his mustache, while the woman forces a smile despite the faint burns forming on her cheeks. This, he insists, is the future of beauty. You mutter, dry as dust. So the next time your phone charger shocks you, just remember, in 1895, that counted as a spa treatment. The women applaud, eager for their turn, even as their skin reddens and trembles. And you realize beauty has moved from the ritual fire to the laboratory, from the cultural to the commercial. But the cost is still the same: pain, damage, sometimes death. The parlor fades, but the smell lingers: sharp chemicals, burnt hair, metallic tang. It is the scent of beauty's experiments, of poisons dressed as miracles. You feel a chill run down your spine, not from the cold, but from the knowledge that these practices are not relics. They echo still, reshaped in modern jars and bottles. And as you step back into the shadows, you can't help but whisper to your unseen companion, if this was the past's idea of a skincare routine, maybe wrinkles aren't the worst thing after all. The shadows shift, the whispers fade, and something darker looms ahead. The lengths people went to when creams and powders weren't enough. When beauty demanded not just application, but transformation. The path bends, and you sense the next chamber waiting. Somewhere ahead lies the story of bodies not just poisoned, but cut, injected, remade in the name of perfection. The floorboards creak as you move deeper into the parlor's gloom. The air grows warmer now, laced with strange fumes. Somewhere ahead, glass bubbles hiss, liquids drip, and metal tools clatter against porcelain bowls. You find yourself in what looks like an early beauty laboratory. Rows of gleaming instruments sit beside half-filled jars. Scissors, scalpels, syringes, things that look more suited to a surgeon's table than a vanity. The women seated here are not content with powders or creams. No, they are the bold ones. The experimenters, willing to let their bodies become canvases for whatever new miracle some eccentric physician promises. The first patient reclines on a padded chair. A man in spectacles leans over her with alarming confidence. He draws a syringe, filling it with paraffin wax. Yes, the same substance used in candles. He explains that this injectable wonder can fill out cheeks, smooth lines, even reshape the nose. You lean back uneasy, because you know how this ends. The paraffin slides beneath her skin, and at first, her face does appear plumper, smoother. She smiles nervously, touching her cheek as if stroking fine porcelain. But paraffin is no friend to flesh. It hardens, migrates, distorts. Soon enough, that same cheek will twist, not sag, and no amount of powder will mask it. You whisper in a low, conspiratorial tone, basically the Victorian version of Botox. Except instead of touch-ups every 6 months, you just got permanent facial lumps. Talk about value. The woman doesn't hear you, of course. She only sees her reflection in the small hand mirror, thrilled by the illusion of youth. At another table, a second patient undergoes something far worse. The doctor snips carefully at her eyelids, claiming he is rejuvenating her tired gaze. The scalpel glints in the lamplight, and you realize this is the crude ancestor of cosmetic surgery, long before anesthesia was reliable or sterilization guaranteed. Blood seeps onto the white cloth. She trembles but forces herself to lie still, believing that pain is the price of beauty. The others look on with admiration, not horror. "This is bravery," they whisper. "This is modernity." You glance aside, muttering dryly. So the next time your friend complains about a bad eyebrow wax, maybe remind them people once got their eyelids sliced off in the name of looking refreshed. Perspective is everything. The room hums with anticipation, as if progress itself is unfolding here. But it's not just the surgeries, it's the gadgets. A young salesman in a crisp suit enters, carrying what looks like a helmet wired with coils. He places it on a volunteer's head, declaring it an electro-massage cap. With a twist of a knob, the helmet buzzes, shocking her scalp with mild jolts. He promises it will stimulate hair growth, restore shine, and perhaps even improve her intellect. The woman squeals as the current zaps through her hair, making it stand on end. The crowd claps, delighted by the spectacle. She forces a laugh, though her eyes are wide with discomfort. You whisper slyly, "Basically the first hairdryer, except instead of drying, it fried." The salesman bows, promising that science is the future of beauty, and the audience believes him, because hope has always been a powerful cosmetic. But hope can be deadly. You wander farther, and the laboratory shifts. The air now smells faintly metallic, tinged with a ghostly glow. The shelves hold glass jars filled with luminous paint, glowing softly in the dim light. A shiver runs down your spine as you realize where you are, the world of the radium girls. Young women sit at long tables, dipping brushes into glowing paint, licking the tips to form perfect points. They laugh together, cheeks glowing faintly in the dark. To them, it is magical, a job that brings beauty and light. They paint watch dials, theater props, even their teeth for fun, glowing smiles flashing in the night. But the glow is no miracle, it is poison. The radium seeps into their bones, gnaws at their marrow, rots their jaws. One girl tilts her head back to laugh, and you swear you see the faint outline of bone through her cheek, as if her very flesh is beginning to thin. They have been told it is harmless, even healthy. Doctors assure them radium invigorates. The company profits, and the women suffer. You lean toward your unseen listener, voice heavy but edged with bitter humor. Glow sticks at raves are one thing. Glow in the dark jawbones, that's a whole other party. The girls chatter, unaware of the doom blooming inside them. You ache to tell them, to warn them. But time is cruel, and their fate is already sealed. Their beauty will become their curse, their laughter their legacy. The laboratory fades again, replaced by a more clinical chamber. White walls, chrome instruments, the faint scent of disinfectant. Early 20th century now, where beauty has become more medical, more institutional. On a table sits a young woman receiving injections of something the doctor proudly calls collagen therapy. The needle pierces her lips, filling them fuller, rounder. She winces but does not protest. The promise of allure outweighs the sting of the needle. Nearby, another woman receives silicone injections, unrefined, dangerous, seeping into her flesh in ways no one yet understands. The doctor assures her it is safe, permanent, transformative. He does not know, or perhaps does not care, that years later her body may reject it violently. You watch, queasy but fascinated, and murmur. So when people today joke about duck lips, remember that a century ago, women were basically playing Russian roulette with liquid silicone. And spoiler alert, silicone usually won. The women leave the clinic smiling, clutching their new faces like treasures. But in your heart, you know these smiles are fragile, destined to crumble. The room grows darker, quieter. And then, in the silence, you hear something faint, the sound of applause. You follow it, stepping into a dim theater where a man in a black suit stands on stage. He gestures dramatically toward a reclining woman, promising the crowd that his patented treatments will restore youth instantly. He applies a cream, mercury-based, and claims it will bleach the skin to perfection. He holds up a tonic, arsenic-laced, and insists it clears the complexion. The crowd gasps, impressed, eager. They do not know the truth, or perhaps they simply do not want to. You lean closer to the edge of the stage, whispering, "Snake oil salesman, but make it luxury skincare." The woman on stage smiles faintly, cheeks burning under the chemical sting. The crowd applauds louder, convinced they have seen a miracle. But you, standing in the wings, see through it. You see the burns, the sores, the tremors yet to come. And you know this is not the end. Because beauty, once it steps into the laboratory, never steps back. It keeps moving forward, more experiments, more risks, more promises wrapped in shiny jars. The applause fades, the theater dissolves. You are left in silence, your chest heavy. You wonder aloud to your unseen companion. If this is what people once endured for beauty, what comes next? How far will the knife, the needle, the chemical go? And then, like a shadow slipping under the door, you feel the next chapter stirring. A world where beauty rituals move beyond creams and scalpels into the strange, the spiritual, the ritualistic. Where people will not just paint or cut, but summon forces beyond themselves in pursuit of perfection. The path grows darker. You take a breath and step forward. The air is different now. Heavier, a damp chill clings to your skin, like you've walked into a room where someone has just blown out a dozen candles. The sweet, metallic tang of wax and smoke lingers, but underneath, there's something earthier. Herbs drying in bundles overhead, a mortar and pestle on the table, its bowl dusted with a fine, reddish powder that doesn't look like any spice you'd sprinkle on a stew. This isn't a salon, or even a laboratory. It's a kitchen. If you squint hard enough, though the cauldron bubbling in the corner, and the jars of suspiciously labeled ingredients say otherwise. Welcome to the beauty parlor of the supernatural age. Here, beauty wasn't just about creams and powders. It was about spells, charms, and occasionally, a dash of powdered corpse. Yes, powdered corpse. You take a step closer to the shelf and squint at a jar marked Mumia. At first, you think it's a mistranslation. Maybe some rare root, maybe something herbal. But no. Mumia was just what it sounds like: ground up bits of Egyptian mummies, imported across Europe like luxury goods. Apothecaries swore it could cure disease, restore vigor, and yes, enhance beauty. People swallowed it, rubbed it into their skin, mixed it into ointments. Imagine treating your wrinkles by dabbing your face with pharaoh dust. You whisper conspiratorially, skincare influencers today sell you collagen from fish scales. Back then, dead kings. Honestly, the packaging alone must have been wild. A woman in a hood enters the room, clutching a small jar of Mumia to her chest like it's liquid gold. She sits before a cracked mirror, mixes the powder with rosewater, and spreads the paste across her face. She murmurs prayers as she works, half believing the power of the flesh she's borrowing. Her reflection glows faintly in the candlelight, more illusion than transformation. She looks satisfied. You just look queasy. But corpse dust was only one item in the mystical beauty pantry. Shift your gaze to the cauldron, where something steams with a sweetness that doesn't belong. A woman stirs it slowly, chanting under her breath. She sprinkles in rosemary, thyme. Wait, is that blood? Yes. A few crimson drops swirl into the broth, disappearing instantly. This is no dinner recipe. This is a love potion, designed to make her more beautiful, more desirable, to whichever unlucky soul is next to cross her path. The idea wasn't that she'd suddenly sprout flawless cheekbones. No, it was subtler. Her presence would glow, her voice would entice, her smile would enthrall. And beauty, after all, is as much perception as it is reality. You lean close to your unseen listener, lowering your voice like you're spilling gossip. So basically the Renaissance version of perfume ads. Drink this blood potion, and suddenly everyone wants to date you. Chanel, no. 5 could never. A young man enters unsuspecting, and she offers him a cup. He drinks, dazzled by her eyes, already half under her spell. You watch his pupils widen, whether from attraction or mild poisoning, you can't be sure. Either way, the potion has done its work. And then, there are the charms. You notice a collection of parchment scraps pinned to the beams above. Each one scrawled with strange symbols, prayers, and instructions. For beauty, one reads, "Wash thy face in the first dew of May," whilst reciting the names of the archangels. Another recommends collecting the fat of a virgin goose and rubbing it onto the cheeks at sunrise. You mutter with a smirk. Meanwhile, we complain if our moisturizer doesn't come with a pump dispenser. These folks were out here hunting virgin geese before breakfast. The parchment rustles faintly, as though responding to your humor, though you're not entirely sure it's the draft. You turn, and there's a new figure in the room now. A woman draped in dark fabrics, a string of bones clattering softly at her neck. She doesn't reach for creams or powders. Instead, she runs her hands across her skin, whispering incantations. Beauty, she claims, is not about altering the flesh but commanding it. Bend the world, bend the mirror, bend the eye that beholds you. For some this worked. At least, others believed it did. A woman who prayed at midnight, bathed in moonlight, and wore a charm of wolf's teeth might indeed seem more radiant. Confidence itself was a spell, and confidence has always been the sharpest cosmetic. You can't help but compare. Confidence still works. Except now we call it contouring. Different tools, same magic trick. The bubbling cauldron hisses louder, and the smell of herbs gives way to something sharper, sour. You edge closer and discover another recipe, one that makes your stomach churn. A mixture of crushed beetles and pigeon droppings, applied as a facial mask to brighten the complexion. The practitioner grins, smearing the paste across her skin until it flakes into a crust. She claims the spirit's favorite, that it draws out illness, that beauty will bloom beneath. You lean back, gagging a little, and whisper, beetles and pigeon poop. And here we thought snail slime serums were pushing it. Around you, the room grows more crowded. Shadows gather in the corners. Women, men, figures both familiar and strange. Each one engaged in some odd ritual. A man sprinkles holy water across his face, believing it will smooth his skin. Another mixes ashes from the church altar into an ointment, convinced it holds divine power. A young girl kneels, reciting psalms while brushing her hair exactly 100 strokes, certain that angels themselves will keep her locks shining. You watch them all, fascinated. This isn't science, and it isn't vanity in the modern sense. It's something deeper, older. Beauty as blessing. Beauty as divine favor. Beauty as a kind of protection. And yet always the same undercurrent desperation. The fear of fading, of being overlooked, of losing worth in the eyes of others. They will swallow corpse dust, drink blood, smear beetle paste, chant until their throats ache. Anything to feel chosen, to feel radiant. Your tone softens as you confide to your unseen listener. And honestly, maybe not much has changed. Today it's serums with unpronounceable ingredients, laser facials, TikTok hacks involving toothpaste, different rituals, same fear. The candles gutter low. The room begins to dissolve around you. The jars, the parchments, the cauldron all fade into smoke, until you're left standing in silence once more. And yet, that silence feels charged. Because you know you've only glimpsed the beginning. These mystical practices were not the end of disturbing beauty rituals. They were merely the bridge between the ancient concoctions of poisons and the modern obsession with procedures. Between corpse dust and collagen, charms and surgery, somewhere ahead a darker chamber awaits. One where obsession turns not just mystical, but monstrous. You take a deep breath, step forward. The world around you reshapes itself like a dream turning sour. The herbs and parchments fade, replaced by stone walls slick with condensation. You hear the echo of water dripping into a pool somewhere in the shadows. It smells damp, iron-rich, faintly like rust. No, fainter, sharper, like blood. You follow the scent hesitant, until the faint glow of torches reveals a sight that stops you cold. A massive stone tub, its rim stained dark, and within it, what can only be described as a bath filled with crimson. The liquid shimmers in the flickering light, ripples dancing across its surface as if someone had just stepped in. And then you see her. A pale figure reclining in the bath, her long hair floating around her like a crown. Her lips curve into the faintest smile as she dips a cloth, lifts it, and lets the red drip down her skin. You whisper, almost afraid of your own voice, so, we've gone from beetle paste to human stock. Great. Skincare just went full horror movie. This, of course, is the legend of Countess Elizabeth B. Thory, the Hungarian noblewoman whose name still clings to every whispered story about blood and vanity. The tale goes that she believed the blood of young maidens could preserve her youth, keep her skin flawless, stop time itself. Some say she bathed in it, others that she drank it. Historians debate, but the legend is enough to chill the air around you. You take a step closer, watching her rub the crimson across her arms, her cheeks, humming softly like it's the most natural ritual in the world. She looks serene, almost holy in her devotion to the bath. But beneath the calm lies terror. For this is not just beauty, it's survival, clawed desperately from the lives of others. You glance sideways and mutter, Imagine Sephora carrying this line. The Victorian collection. Blood masks for eternal youth. I don't think even influencer marketing could make that palatable. The Countess turns her head slightly, as though she heard. Her eyes glint. You freeze. But then she looks away again, satisfied with her reflection in the darkened water. You back away, heart thudding, and find yourself in another chamber. Here, the air is heavy with smoke. Charred feathers singed fur. A woman kneels before a fire, tossing animal parts into the flames. The stench is awful, burnt hair, roasted fat, but she doesn't flinch. She gathers the ashes carefully into a bowl, mixes them with oil, and applies the grey paste across her face. She believes the essence of the animal, their vitality, their strength, will seep into her flesh. Talk about face masks, you whisper with a grimace. Today it's avocado and honey. Back then, it was cremated pigeon. Somebody call Gwyneth Paltrow. She's missing out. The woman closes her eyes, letting the ash crack against her skin as it dries. Around her, others perform similar rites. Some grind animal livers, smearing the paste under their eyes for brightness. Some use warm animal blood as a hair rinse, believing it thickens the strands. Others simply wear charms made of claws or bones, convinced that beauty flows from the beast to the body. It is grotesque, yet strangely reverent. For them, animals weren't just food, they were conduits of power. To take from them was to invite that essence into oneself. And beauty, after all, was not about aesthetics alone. It was survival attraction, the line between prosperity and ruin. But just as animals were invoked, so too were darker forces. The room shifts again, and now you're standing in what looks unmistakably like a crypt. Candles burn low, their light illuminating sigils etched into the stone floor. A woman kneels at the center, her hair wild, her face already painted with soot and wine. She chants, calling not to angels but to something else. Something older. She presses her palms to her face, smearing the black mixture upward until it frames her eyes like shadow. She believes this ritual, this pact, will lend her eternal beauty. Not simply to look young, but to command desire itself. Demonic cosmetics, if you will. You shift uncomfortably, lowering your voice. And here's where we learn the original smoky eye had a bit more fire and brimstone than today's YouTube tutorials. The air grows colder as the chant deepens. The woman's breathing turns ragged, her body trembling with devotion or terror. You can't tell which. When she finally lifts her head, her eyes glitter with something unnatural. Confidence? Madness? Maybe both. Not all rituals were so overtly sinister. Some were simply bizarre. You find yourself in a quiet garden at dawn. Women kneel in the grass, collecting drops of dew with fine cloths. They dab the moisture onto their cheeks, believing this, first dew of May, held magical properties. A few others roll in the damp grass entirely, laughing, insisting the earth itself will gift them beauty. It's whimsical, even sweet, compared to what you've seen. But the desperation is the same. From corpse dust to dewdrops, bloodbaths to moonlit prayers, the goal never changes to hold on to radiance a little longer. You pause, glancing back at your invisible listener, softening your tone. And really, isn't that what we still do? Chasing miracle creams, exotic serums, TikTok potions that promise to erase years overnight. Only difference is, our rituals don't usually involve goat blood. Usually, the morning light in the garden fades. The laughter fades. And once again, you're left in the shadows. All these rituals, the mystical, the grotesque, the sweetly superstitious, blur together into one truth. Beauty was never simply skin deep. It was spiritual, mystical, cosmic. A thing worth calling on gods for, worth smearing pigeon ashes across your cheeks for, worth draining the lifeblood of innocence for. And as the shadows close in, a whisper runs through your thought sea. What happens when beauty is no longer just about the self, but about power? What happens when the ritual doesn't stop at the body, but consumes the soul? The darkness tightens. The cauldron hisses again. The bath ripples one last time. And with that, Chapter 5 ends, its secret simmering, leaving you perched at the edge of something darker still. Because ahead lies not just ritual, but obsession. Not just mystical beauty, but surgical cruelty. The candlelight you left behind flickers out, and suddenly you're somewhere brighter. The stone crypt, the ritual chants, the Countess's bath, they dissolve. In their place comes a sterile coldness, though not the comforting sterility of a modern hospital, No beeping machines, no antiseptic tang of alcohol wipes. Instead, the air smells faintly of raw flesh, hot iron, and vinegar. You realize you're standing in what passes, in this century, for a surgery chamber. A long wooden table dominates the room, scarred from years of use. On it lies a woman, her eyes wide but resigned. A man looms over her, knife in hand, his sleeves rolled up, his face glistening with sweat. He is not a doctor in the way we think of one. He is part barber, part butcher, part visionary, and he is about to fix beauty with the blade. The knife touches skin. There is no anesthesia beyond a strong drink. The woman whimpers but does not move. She has paid for this. She has begged for this. The cut is quick, jagged. He slices at her eyelid, adjusting the fold to make her look more awake, more youthful. Blood beads, then runs down her temple. He wipes it away with a rag that has definitely been used before. You whisper, feeling your own eyes sting. Congratulations, you've just witnessed the birth of cosmetic surgery. And no, they didn't even have numbing cream. Forget Botox. This was more like butcher box. The so-called surgeon pulls the skin taut, sewing it crudely with thick thread. The patient moans but clings to her vision of transformation. To her this agony is worth it. To emerge more desirable, more radiant, more powerful, it is worth the scar. Of course, eyelid lifts weren't the only thing. Nose jobs existed too, though job feels like a generous word. In Renaissance Italy, surgeons experimented with cutting cartilage, reshaping noses deformed by disease or accident. Sometimes it worked. More often, it left patients with scars or collapsed bridges. But the goal was the same: beauty through the knife. And you can't help but grin grimly. Imagine explaining this on a dating profile back then. Hobbies include embroidery, falconry, and surviving my second nose reconstruction. That's commitment. The room shifts, and you're pulled further along the timeline. Now you find yourself in the late 19th century. The instruments are sharper, more precise, though still terrifying. There's an unsettling glimmer to the steel scalpel lying on a tray beside hooks, needles, and wire. The surgeon is German, and his patient is another woman, her cheeks flushed, her breathing shallow. This time, the target is the skin itself. He lifts it, slices carefully, then stretches it back before stitching it tighter. The first recorded facelifts, primitive, brutal, but undeniably effective. When the bandages come off weeks later, she will look younger, fresher. She will also have endured weeks of pus, fever, and the constant risk of infection. And you lean closer to your unseen companion, lowering your voice conspiratorially. They didn't call it a facelift then. More like creative upholstery. Imagine someone stretching out your favorite old couch, but the couch is your face. The patient doesn't laugh. She can't. Her teeth are clenched against the pain, her hands gripping the wooden arms of the chair, as if she's about to fly apart. As grotesque as it is, you start to understand the pattern. Rituals with ashes and blood could only go so far. To change the body itself, to cut into it and remake it, that was something new, something dangerous, something disturbingly modern. The walls around you begin to shimmer, and suddenly you're not in Europe anymore. You're in India centuries earlier, watching as a man with a badly damaged nose sits nervously in the dirt. A surgeon kneels before him, mixing clay, water, and leaves. This is the Sushruta Samhita in practice, ancient reconstructive surgery. He slices a flap of skin from the patient's cheek, twists it, and grafts it onto the nose. It is ingenious, sophisticated compared to the butchery you've seen elsewhere. But it is still surgery without anesthesia. Every slice makes the man flinch, his nails digging into his knees. Rhinoplasty, you murmur, brought to you by the 6th century, makes modern filler look like a walk in the park, doesn't it? The reconstructed nose will not be perfect, but it will restore dignity. And in that moment, you realize these surgeries were not only about vanity. They were about survival, about reclaiming identity, about belonging in a world that punished imperfection. But beauty is rarely satisfied. Once a technique exists, it spreads. And as centuries roll forward, the knife sharpens, the stakes rise. You're whisked now into a Victorian parlor, where a woman sits very still while a doctor injects paraffin wax beneath her skin. Her cheeks swell slightly, her wrinkles vanish. She gasps! She looks years younger! The doctor smiles, triumphant. But what she doesn't know is that the paraffin will harden, migrate, Sometimes even form lumps that disfigure her far worse than before. You wince as you watch, whispering. And this, my friends, is why you don't let your plastic surgeon raid the candle shop. The Victorian obsession with smooth skin didn't stop there. Some tried injecting other substances, animal fats, even mercury compounds, believing they could fill, plump, rejuvenate. The risks were enormous, but desperation made people reckless. The air thickens, and you're drawn next to a dimly lit room in early 20th century New York. Here, women gather for illegal beauty surgeries in back rooms. Scalpel in hand, a doctor carves, sutures promises. Infection is rampant, death's common, but the demand never wanes. Because the promise of beauty, of transformation, is too strong to resist. You lean back, your voice dropping. Imagine risking your life for a facelift in a basement, when you could just age gracefully. But no. Instagram filters hadn't been invented yet. So it was either this or eternal knitting. The patient's muffled screams echo through the room as the scalpel bites into flesh. It is horrifying, but it is also mesmerizing. The sheer lengths humans will go to, the sheer agony they endure, all for the fleeting illusion of youth. And as you stand there in the reek of blood and paraffin, one thought gnaws at you. If this is what they dared with crude knives and wax, what horrors must lie ahead as science advances further? The room begins to blur again, pulling you toward the hum of electricity, toward sterilized steel, toward the dawn of modern cosmetic madness. And that is where part one closes, leaving you balanced on the cusp of something sharper, colder, and far more invasive than even the Countess's bath. The hum you hear first is not human. It's mechanical, low, unsettling. Gone are the flickering candles and vinegar-soaked rags. Instead, the room around you glows white, almost painfully so. The walls gleam with tiled sterility, the kind that should feel safe, but you know better by now. The year is the early 20th century, and cosmetic surgery has marched out of the back alleys and into something resembling a clinic. But don't breathe too easily. These gleaming walls hide just as much pain as the butcher's table. A woman lies on a surgical bed, her hair wrapped, her face pale. Beside her, a surgeon fiddles with a new contraption, electrodes, wires, a buzzing box that smells faintly of burning dust. He presses two pads against her cheeks, and suddenly her body jerks. Electricity courses through her skin, tightening muscles, promising a firmer, younger face. This is electrotherapy, a beauty craze of the 1920s. It promised rejuvenation through jolts of current. The idea was that electricity would stimulate blood flow, tone muscles, and erase wrinkles. The reality, it often just hurt, left burns, or made people twitch like broken marionettes. You lean in, whispering with a wry grin. And you thought modern spa facials were expensive. Imagine paying a week's wages to be electrocuted into a glowing skin. Basically a taser with better marketing. The woman bites her lip, enduring the treatment. When it's done, her cheeks do look flushed. But whether from improved circulation or mild electrical burns is anyone's guess. Electricity wasn't the only new tool. Surgeons experimented with carving away fat beneath the chin, slicing off excess skin from eyelids, even removing ribs to create slimmer waists. Yes, removing ribs. You blink, leaning closer to your unseen companion. That's right. People were literally carving out bones to get that snatched silhouette. Forget waist trainers, they just deleted ribs. Delete key, activated. But with every successful surgery came dozens that went wrong. Infection still raged, anesthesia was still risky, and surgical instruments weren't always properly sterilized. Women died trying to be beautiful. Men, too, though fewer admitted it. And the newspapers whispered of scandals, botched surgeries, ruined faces, the surgeons who disappeared in disgrace. The walls flicker again, and suddenly you're seated in a 1930s Hollywood dressing room. The lights of the vanity mirror shine bright, and you can smell face powder thick in the air. A young starlet tilts her head, touching her cheek nervously. Her studio contract demands she look fresh, radiant, ageless. Behind her, a doctor prepares an injection. Liquid paraffin once again, but now hyped as safer, refined. He injects, she gasps, and for a moment her face glows with youth. But weeks later, the paraffin hardens under the skin, forming lumps, ridges, grotesque bulges. Her career is ruined. The studio erases her name from posters. You sigh, turning to the invisible viewer beside you. Hollywood giveth, Hollywood deformeth. Nowadays, you just get cancelled on Twitter. Back then, you got cancelled by your own collapsing cheekbones. But Hollywood wasn't the only culprit. Beauty surgeons in Germany, France, and America were experimenting with techniques that would become standard today. Breast augmentations, lip reshaping, even jawline contouring. The methods were crude. Silicone wasn't yet available, so early implants included everything from glass balls to ivory, even sponges. These foreign bodies often caused horrific infections, sometimes poisoning the patient outright. You wince as one unlucky woman in the 1940s arches in agony on an operating table, her chest swelling unnaturally before rupturing. The doctor, pale with fear, realizes too late that beauty is not easily engineered. And yet, people kept coming. Always more patients, always more eager to gamble their bodies on the altar of fashion. The room shifts again, and suddenly you're standing in the wake of war. It is the late 1940s and soldiers return home with scars, burns, shattered faces. Surgeons, desperate to restore them, refine techniques of skin grafting, reconstructive surgery, and prosthetics. These methods, born of necessity, bleed into cosmetic surgery. For the first time, the line between survival and vanity blurs. A surgeon in London works on a pilot whose face was melted by fire. He rebuilds his nose, reshapes his eyelids, restores what was lost. And in the next room, a woman lies waiting, not a soldier, but a socialite. She wants her wrinkles cut away. The surgeon moves seamlessly from battlefield medicine to high society beauty. You whisper, almost reverently now, this is where it all merged. Healing the wounded and pleasing the vain. Same scalpel, different motives. But vanity remained ruthless. In the 1950s, surgeons began experimenting with silicone injections for breast enhancement. At first, it seemed miraculous, plumpness, volume, youth. But the silicone often hardened, migrated, or caused chronic illness. Thousands of women suffered silently, trapped by both social expectations and botched results. You raise an eyebrow, muttering, and people still argue about microplastics in bottled water. Imagine having macroplastics swimming around in your chest. The decades rolled on. By the 1960s, the first silicone breast implants were officially developed. They were safer, but not safe enough. Women reported ruptures, leaks, autoimmune issues. Still, the demand never stopped. Bigger was better, no matter the risk. At the same time, liposuction was born. Surgeons inserted hollow tubes, sucking fat from hips and thighs. Early techniques were brutal, leaving patients bruised, scarred, sometimes dead. Yet the promise of sculpting the body without diet or exercise was irresistible. You glance sideways, smirking. Let's be honest. If you could skip the treadmill forever and just pay some guy with a vacuum, would you? Judging by the 1970s, the answer was yes. The problem was, the vacuum cleaner sometimes came with a death certificate. By now, you've noticed the pattern. Each new innovation in beauty comes not with celebration, but with casualties. For every patient who walks out rejuvenated, another lies buried. And still, the world keeps demanding more. The room around you now glows neon, pulsing with the excess of the 1980s. Surgeons drive sports cars, billboards advertise facelifts like fashion accessories, and the wealthy line up for their shot at eternal youth. Liposuction is refined, implants are perfected, facelifts become commonplace. What was once unthinkable is now expected. But beneath the gloss lies the same old blood. One surgeon in Beverly Hills boasts of 30 facelifts in a week, his patients wrapped in bandages like mummies, their faces pulled tight as drumskins. Another experiments with new injectable fillers that swell lips grotesquely, leaving them looking less like roses and more like raw sausages. You chuckle, whispering, and thus the era of the duck face began. Quack quack, but make it sexy. The air around you thickens again, the decades flashing past. 90s, 2000s, the rise of Botox, the flood of fillers, the obsession with Kardashian proportions, TikTok jawlines, and Brazilian butt lifts that quietly rack up the highest surgical mortality rates of them all. And as you stand there, surrounded by echoes of scalpels, needles, and endless whispers of just one more procedure, you can't help but wonder, where does it end? When beauty becomes not just ritual, not just surgery, but full-blown engineering of the human body, how much is too much? The lights flicker, shadows gather, and you feel yourself being tugged again, away from the scalpel, toward something older, stranger, and far more ritualistic. Not surgery, not electricity, but something rawer. The air smells of herbs, oils, incense. The floor beneath your feet is stone, worn smooth by centuries of barefoot steps. Ahead, a figure grinds powder in a mortar, chanting softly. This is not the clinic, not the salon, not Hollywood. This is the temple. And as the figure turns toward you, holding out a bowl of shimmering ointment, made of crushed minerals, herbs, and something disturbingly unidentifiable, and beauty is about to get spiritual, mystical, and just as disturbing as the knife. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, but the smell. Thick, resinous incense curls in the air, mixing with the acrid tang of burning herbs. It clings to your throat, makes your eyes water. You blink through the haze, and slowly the room emerges, stone walls, carved with symbols you can't quite decipher, flickering torches set into alcoves, shadows dancing in shapes that almost, look alive. A woman kneels before an altar, her hair oiled and shining, her skin glistening with something that looks suspiciously sticky. A priestess hovers above her, chanting in a low, rhythmic murmur while stirring a bowl of powder. The powder, you realize with a shudder, is ground beetles mixed with lead. The goal, a complexion pale enough to rival the moon. You lean in, whispering conspiratorially to your unseen companion. So basically, Sephora. But the return policy is death. The beetle, lead paste is smeared across the woman's cheeks, her lips, even her eyelids. She doesn't flinch. Beauty here isn't optional, it's holy. The ritual insists that the gods favor the flawless. And flawless, of course, requires sacrifice. Not far away, another woman lies flat as attendants pour a mixture of crushed herbs and animal fat over her body. The fat is pungent, the herbs bitter. It hardens on her skin like plaster. They say it cleanses the spirit, drives away illness, and ensures fertility. You know better. This is less skincare, more full body marinade. You sigh, muttering. Imagine booking a spa day and getting basted like a Thanksgiving turkey. 10 out of 10. Would not recommend on Yelp. But the women endure. Some even smile. Because here, in this temple, beauty is not only a personal desire, it's a cosmic duty. To appear radiant is to honor the gods, to display devotion, to embody the divine. Ugly in their eyes means unworthy. The chanting grows louder. A priest enters carrying a knife, its blade smeared with what looks like dried blood. He does not approach the altar as a surgeon would, with precision and care. He approaches like an executioner. But instead of striking, he makes a shallow cut along the woman's arm, just enough to draw blood. The blood is caught in a small bowl and mixed with powdered herbs, creating a ritual ointment said to bring eternal youth when smeared upon the skin. You recoil slightly, then murmur, DY blood facials. Gwyneth Paltrow would love this. The practice wasn't limited to this temple. Across cultures, beauty and blood often intertwined. In parts of ancient Mesoamerica, women ground cochineal insects into a vivid crimson pigment, smearing it on their lips and cheeks. Beautiful, yes, but cochineal farming required thousands of crushed bugs for a single vial of color. Somewhere a modern vegan is screaming. And in India, ritual beauty often meant applying turmeric, sandalwood, and ash before festivals. Harmless enough. Until you remember some formulas included ground up mercury or arsenic for that radiant glow. Imagine showing up to a wedding literally glowing, but only because your bloodstream is basically radioactive. The temple fades, and now you're standing in a dimly lit chamber in medieval Europe. Here, beauty rituals are cloaked in Christianity, but just as disturbing. Women scourge their skin with nettles to cleanse impurities, or bathe in vinegar so strong it strips layers of flesh. Some drink potions brewed from animal bile and ashes, believing it will grant luminous skin. You glance at your invisible listener, muttering with a smirk. They called it holy water, but it was basically medieval kombucha. But the most chilling of all is the ritual fasting. To remain thin and pure, some women starved themselves in the name of devotion, bodies shrinking until they resembled walking skeletons. They were praised, even canonized, their frailty mistaken for holiness. You can't help but think of modern diet culture, hashtags and glossy magazines, and realize not much has changed. Suddenly, the scene shifts eastward. You find yourself in an ancient Japanese court, watching women blacken their teeth with a sticky tar, like substance called ohagoro. The practice, considered elegant, was both cosmetic and symbolic, marking adulthood, loyalty, refinement. The tar stinks of iron filings and vinegar, But women bear it proudly, their teeth glistening like lacquered obsidian. You chuckle quietly, and you thought whitening strips were bad. At least Crest doesn't smell like a rusty salad. Yet the effect is mesmerizing. In candlelight, those blackened smiles gleam, eerie yet strangely beautiful. To their eyes, it is perfection. To yours, it's haunting. The shadows shift again. You are now in a dim chamber in Renaissance Italy, where beauty and mysticism merge seamlessly. Women smear their faces with deadly white lead powder, whispering prayers as they apply it. Some even consult astrologers before their beauty routines, believing the position of the stars would determine the success of their cosmetics. Mars in retrograde. Maybe skip the eyeliner. Nearby, a noblewoman sprinkles powdered toad bones into her face cream, convinced it wards off blemishes. Another carries an amulet filled with powdered gemstones, believing it keeps her youthful. Science is centuries away, but the belief, the ritual, the desperation is timeless. You lean close, voice dripping with sarcasm. So next time someone sells you a crystal infused toner, just remember it's basically a Renaissance scam with better packaging. The room grows warmer, heavy with smoke and whispers. You realize that for millennia, beauty was rarely just about looking good. It was spiritual warfare. Against time, against fate, against mortality itself. Every ointment, every scar, every cut was an offering, sometimes to gods, sometimes to society, sometimes to nothing more than vanity. And as you stand there, the incense smoke thickening until it feels like a living thing, you know the rituals are about to get even stranger. Because beyond the blood, beyond the herbs, beyond the blackened teeth and glowing poisons, there are sacrifices yet to be revealed. The priestess at the altar lifts her bowl, chanting louder. Her eyes lock on you unblinking, as though she's been aware of your presence all along. She smiles, teeth red with beetle dye, and whispers words you don't understand. But you know one thing, she's inviting you closer. And you, of course, step forward. Because the story of beauty rituals isn't finished yet. The priestess's whisper lingers in the air, like smoke clinging to your clothes long after a bonfire. You step closer, though every instinct tells you not to. The bowl she holds glimmers faintly in the firelight. Inside, the mixture is thick and dark, almost alive in the way it bubbles faintly. She dips 2 fingers into it, and smears a streak across her own forehead. The audience around her gasps softly, as if witnessing something divine. Then she turns to you. Of course you're not really here. Not entirely. You're a traveler, a voyeur of history. Yet the way her eyes bore into yours makes you wonder. What if rituals do leave stains on the soul, no matter how many centuries away you are? Before you can answer, the chamber dissolves, and you're standing somewhere colder, cruder. The smell of iron is sharp in your nose, and the sound of chanting echoes off cavern walls. We've slipped now into a Viking settlement, where beauty and ritual are knitted together with equal parts blood and bravado. Here, women braid their hair not simply for aesthetics, but as an act of devotion, each plait bound tightly with charms and bones, meant to ward off ill fortune. Some smear ash across their faces, drawn from the sacred fires of their hearth, believing it bestows strength and allure. And then there are the more pungent practices. The Vikings prized strong, healthy teeth, so some would deliberately file shallow grooves into them and rub in colored resins. Blood red, charcoal black, even metallic glimmers. Imagine smiling at your neighbor and revealing a grin that looks like a cursed art project. You shake your head, muttering. And you thought grills were a 2000s thing. Vikings were basically the first rappers, but with way worse dental plans. But rituals weren't always cosmetic, they were mystical insurance policies. To smear blood across the cheeks before battle wasn't just intimidation. It was beauty in the sense of embodying fearlessness. Seduction to the gods of war themselves. To the Vikings, the line between beauty and terror was thin, and sometimes non-existent. From the cold of the north, we drift into the blazing deserts of Egypt again. Not into the noble courts this time, but into the secret chambers of priests and priestesses. Here, beauty is a spell. Ointments are not merely skincare, but offerings to deities like Hathor, goddess of love and beauty. Women coat themselves in thick layers of oils, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense. But perfumes weren't always floral delights. Some recipes called for animal excrement or crushed mice, blended until the scent was masked with resin. If you've ever sprayed too much Axe body spray in high school, you know something about weaponized aromas. One priestess takes a small bronze needle and pricks her lips until they bleed. She mixes the blood with powdered red ochre and smears it across her mouth. The color is rich, startling, magnetic. To her, it's not just lipstick, it's a covenant. To you, it looks suspiciously like goth makeup done in a basement. You lean close, whispering, "Hot topic, 100 BCE edition." The desert air shifts, replaced by the humid heaviness of the Amazon. Here, indigenous tribes practice body painting rituals using the juice of the jenipapo fruit, staining skin deep blue, black for weeks. Patterns are painted across arms, legs and faces, geometric, swirling alive. These markings aren't decorative alone, they signal maturity, identity, readiness for marriage. But for some tribes, beauty also meant more extreme rites, young women enduring painful piercings with bone needles, or chewing plants that left their mouths raw, but their teeth gleaming. And in the distance you hear singing, low, rhythmic, weaving beauty with pain until the two are indistinguishable. The song fades, and suddenly you're in medieval Europe once again, this time during a festival. The streets are alive with bonfires and drunken laughter, but behind closed doors, women perform rituals that would make your dermatologist faint. They smear snail slime over their faces, convinced it smooths away wrinkles. They concoct love potions that include ground-up frogs, powdered teeth, and even menstrual blood. Not exactly something you'd find in Sephora's Valentine's Day sale. One noblewoman, desperate to keep her husband's wandering eye, whispers prayers while mixing pigeon droppings into her night cream. The result? A sour stench that clings to her skin as she sleeps, but a face she swears glows in the morning light. Her maid, wrinkling her nose, mutters under her breath. You almost sympathize. After all, nothing says romance like smelling vaguely like a barnyard. You laugh quietly, honestly. Medieval marriages failed less because of infidelity and more because someone's skincare smelled like bird poop. But behind the humor lies desperation. For many of these women, beauty wasn't indulgence. It was survival. To lose one's looks was to risk losing status, protection, even food. So the rituals grew stranger, darker, riskier. Faith mixed with fear until it became impossible to separate the two. And then, you're back in the East, standing in a quiet courtyard in China during the Tang Dynasty. Lanterns sway gently in the evening breeze. Women prepare for a festival by painting their foreheads with small, delicate designs. Flowers, moons, tiny golden leaves pressed directly onto the skin. The effect is stunning, otherworldly. But it's not enough. Some go further, swallowing small doses of powdered pearls to brighten their complexion. Harmless enough in small amounts, but in the wrong hands, a slow poison. One young woman giggles nervously as she sips her pearl-dusted tea. Her friends assuring her she'll glow under the lanterns. You watch her lips glisten, shimmering faintly in the dim light. A beauty, yes, but one that carries danger with every swallow. You mutter, dryly, glittery drinks. Basically Instagram smoothies, but with a side of heavy metal poisoning. The ritual dances between delicacy and dread. The women laugh, gossiping under the stars, but behind their painted brows lies the quiet understanding that beauty is both armor and prison. And then the courtyard melts away. You find yourself in the Andes, where Incan women chew coca leaves before ceremonies, staining their lips a vivid green. Their cheeks flush, eyes wide, movements sharper. To them, it is beauty, vitality, divine favor. To you, it's basically Red Bull, minus the branding. The realization settles over you like the smoke from the temple we left earlier. Across continents, across centuries, beauty rituals weren't just strange, they were sacred. Every cut, every smear, every swallow of poison or herb wasn't vanity, it was worship. Of gods, of power, of survival. The priestess's whisper returns faint but insistent. Step closer. You do. And this time, the ritual doesn't fade away. The smoke swirls thicker, the torches dimmer, and you feel the weight of thousands of years of offerings pressed into your skin like invisible makeup. You can almost hear them. The women of every age, chanting, laughing, bleeding, painting, praying, each convinced their ritual would protect them, elevate them, make them beautiful enough to matter. And as you draw a shaky breath, you realize this chapter is closing. But ahead, there are rituals darker still. Practices where beauty is no longer just sacred, but dangerous, where the line between devotion and destruction blurs entirely. The smoke parts, revealing the faint outline of scissors, of scalpels, of shadows bent over eager bodies. Something tells you the next step will not be gentle. The air feels colder as you step forward, as though the centuries themselves have exhaled in warning. The smoke clears not into temples or courts, but into a dim chamber reeking faintly of iron, herbs, and something else. Something sharp, metallic, unmistakable. Blood. You glance down and realize you're standing beside a long wooden table. The kind meant for feasts, but this one is covered in cloth stained brown with dried fluids. Small knives, bone saws, and hooks are laid out carefully, almost reverently. And standing over it, a man in a heavy apron, sleeves rolled high, hands already slick with what you pray is red paint. Welcome to the realm where beauty stopped being satisfied with powders and potions. Here, the human body itself was sculpted, carved, altered in pursuit of some impossible standard. This isn't skincare. It's survival of the prettiest, with all the delicacy of a butcher's shop. The man leans over a woman, her eyes fluttering with the dull fog of whatever herb brew passes for anesthesia. He takes a small blade, tilts her nose, and with a precise slice, he shaves cartilage. Your stomach flips, though you can't look away. Cosmetic surgery, you realize, wasn't invented in Beverly Hills. It's far older, far riskier, and far bloodier. In India centuries ago, Ayurvedic texts describe procedures for reshaping noses, not for vanity alone but often to repair what punishment or disease had stolen. A nose cut off for adultery could be reconstructed using skin flaps from the cheek or forehead. These early surgeons, Sushruta foremost among them, were pioneers of rhinoplasty long before scalpels gleamed under electric lights. The goal wasn't Instagram angles. It was restoring honor, even survival. Yet, as with all things, once a practice exists, vanity isn't far behind. You lean in, whispering. Imagine explaining to your insurance provider that your forehead, skin nose job was medically necessary. Even Blue Cross would hang up. But not all alterations were restorative. Some were purely for a yaw. In Renaissance Italy, women plucked their hairlines high, scalping themselves carefully at the temples until their foreheads stretched unnaturally wide. Beauty, they believed, was a canvas best emptied. The forehead like a glowing moon to show off intelligence and grace. The effect? Strangely alien, unsettling, almost as if you'd been halfway scalped. In certain noble houses, women sat patiently as small razors carved away hairline after hairline, blood sometimes seeping before powders were packed in to stop it. Beauty was measured not by the softness of skin, but by the geometry of the skull itself. And here's you standing in the corner, muttering. Basically, they gave themselves receding hairlines on purpose. Meanwhile, today people pay fortunes for hair transplants. Fashion is a scam, confirmed. From the forehead, our journey slips lower to the skin, pale skin to be exact. Across Europe, centuries of obsession led to dangerous rituals of skin whitening. Ceruse, a paste made from vinegar and white lead, was slathered across faces to create the ghostly pallor associated with wealth and delicacy. The effect was striking, smooth, porcelain-like unblemished. It also poisoned slowly, seeping into the bloodstream, blackening teeth, rotting flesh beneath the surface. You imagine the scene: a noble woman smiles, her face radiant in candlelight, but when she laughs, her gums bleed faintly. Her maid whispers behind her, horrified, yet the mistress insists beauty is worth it. You shudder and mutter. So basically, they were cosplaying as porcelain dolls, while literally disintegrating inside. Talk about committing to the bit. But the rituals of alteration didn't stop at skin tone. No, beauty dug deeper into flesh, into bone, into the very architecture of the body. In the Far East, in dim courtyards, where silence was enforced by more than politeness, young girls endured the cruel artistry of foot binding. Their feet, wrapped tight with cloth until bones broke and arches collapsed, transformed into lotus feet, tiny, delicate symbols of grace. The pain was unimaginable, infections were constant. Yet the bound foot, stunted and twisted, became an erotic object, a sign of status. You kneel beside one such girl, tears streaming down her cheeks as her mother winds the cloth tighter. She is 8, perhaps 9. Her cries are muffled by the walls of tradition. To her family, this is beauty, survival, her only hope of securing a future. To you, it is torture disguised in silk. Your voice breaks the silence. And here I am complaining when sneakers pinch my pinky toe. These girls would have looked at Air Jordans like they were heaven's gift. From feet to waists, the obsession travels. In 18th and 19th century Europe, corsets reigned supreme. Steel-boned laced mercilessly, these garments compressed waists into impossibly narrow shapes. Women fainted at parties, lungs restricted, ribs bent inward. Some corsets even shifted internal organs, pressing them until digestion itself became agony. One noblewoman clutches a chair, her face pale. As her maid yanks the laces tighter, tighter still, until her waist is scarcely larger than a man's handspan. She totters into the ballroom, radiant, applauded for her beauty. No one mentions that she can barely breathe. You whisper, Victorian women basically invented waist trainers, but instead of fitness influencers, they just collapsed dramatically on fainting couches. Honestly, same vibe as Instagram thirst traps. Minus the ring light. But the scalpel wasn't confined to noses or punishments. By the 20th century, the pursuit of beauty through knives became mainstream. In smoky backrooms of Europe and America, early plastic surgeons carved away imperfections. Stretching skin, trimming eyelids, reshaping breasts. Many procedures ended in infection, even death. Yet women lined up, desperate for the promise of perfection, no matter the cost. And so, standing in this chamber of blades, you realize beauty rituals weren't evolving. They were escalating. From herbs to lead, from bindings to corsets, from powders to scalpels. Each step more invasive, more dangerous, more permanent. The man in the apron leans closer, whispering over his patient. Perfection requires sacrifice. And though his words are centuries old, they echo in your ears like something you've heard on a modern billboard. Maybe whispered by a cosmetic surgeon's assistant as she hands you a brochure for Botox. Maybe scrolling through your feed, hidden behind a discount code. Sacrifice. Always sacrifice. The chamber darkens around you, the blades gleaming faintly as though alive. You feel a chill crawl up your spine. You've seen the rituals of powders and paints, of smoke and prayer. But this is flesh itself being offered up on the altar of beauty. And just as you begin to step back, the floor beneath you tilts. The knives scatter, the table slides, and you are pulled downward, down into another chamber, where the sacrifices become strangers still, and the human body becomes not just a canvas, but a battlefield. The descent has only begun. The world rights itself with a jolt, though you wish it hadn't. You land in a space colder than before, a cellar carved from stone, dimly lit by wavering oil lamps. The air is thick with damp, carrying not the sweet perfumes of nobles, or the smoky incense of shrines, but the unmistakable tang of antiseptic herbs mixed with something sour, puss. Before you, a group of figures hunches over a woman lying prone on a wooden board. Her face is pale, her body trembling. On the floor, a bucket catches what you realize is bloodied water. The men whisper hurriedly, not in prayer but in technical language. You realize you've stumbled into the darker corners of early cosmetic surgery. One of them pulls a crude needle threaded with catgut. Yes, literal strands from a cat's intestine. He begins stitching flesh. This isn't battlefield medicine, this is elective. The woman had begged to look younger, smoother, less worn. The men around her are improvising skin tightening, pulling, sewing, stretching. An early facelift. Centuries before sterile clinics and recovery rooms with ice packs. You whisper nervously, Botox is starting to sound like a spa day compared to this. But this was the reality beauty pursued not with caution, but with desperation. Early facelifts left scars that stretched from temple to jaw. Some stitches burst open. Infections claimed countless lives. Still, clients return, whispering their willingness to risk it all for the fleeting chance at appearing young again. The lamp flickers, shadows stretch, and suddenly you are standing in another room. This time, gilded, shimmering, perfumed, Paris, late 19th century. Aristocratic salons buzz with chatter about a man named Charles Dugeria, among the first to openly perform cosmetic enhancements. Women flock to him, eager to alter noses, lift sagging chins, reshape what nature had given them. His fame spreads, though whispers of deaths trail him too. One woman, eyes wide with fear, approaches him for breast augmentation. Her wish, to appear fuller, more desirable. His method, injecting paraffin wax directly into her breasts. At first, the transformation delights her. But weeks later the wax hardens, twisting under the skin, forming lumps, infections, grotesque deformities. The beauty she longed for curdles into nightmare. You can't help but mutter. Silicone implants might rupture, sure, but at least they don't melt like candle wax in your chest. Good Lord. But Dugeria was no outlier. Across the world, surgeons experimented with strange substances: Vaseline, liquid glass, even ivory inserts. Each innovation promised the body sculpted like marble, smooth, symmetrical, eternal. But the results often resembled not Greek statues, but grotesque parodies of flesh. From the salons of Paris you tumble eastward. Tokyo, early 20th century. A woman sits nervously in a small clinic. She's heard whispers of a new procedure, one that can give her eyes the rounder, wider look of Western women, then seen as fashionable and modern. The surgeon takes a scalpel, makes 2 swift cuts in her eyelid, stitches them into a crease. The first recorded double eyelid surgery. The woman winces, her eyes watering, but when the stitches heal, her gaze indeed changes. This was not vanity alone, it was survival. In a rapidly modernizing Japan, where Western aesthetics were becoming a social advantage, such changes meant opportunities, marriages, status. But it also meant slicing into identity itself, rewriting beauty through surgical conformity. You whisper quietly. Imagine explaining to your grandma that someone literally invented a permanent Instagram filter for your eyes, and people lined up for it. Actually, not that hard to imagine, come to think of it. The cellar quakes again. You grip a stone wall for balance, and when your eyes refocus, the tools before you are cleaner, shinier, surgical steel instead of bone knives. But the fear in the patient's eyes hasn't changed. Now you stand in a 1920s American hospital, sterile tiles gleaming. Here, surgeons experiment with new facelifts and nose jobs, promoting them in glossy magazines as if they were simple makeovers. But the risks remain staggering: scarring, infection, disfigurement. One young woman clutches her nurse's hand as a surgeon approaches with chloroform. Her dream is simply to fit in. She believes her nose marks hers as different, an outsider in a society obsessed with conformity. The blade descends, and you realize, here, cosmetic surgery is not just vanity. It's assimilation, the reshaping of identity to blend into a ruthless culture. You can't help but sigh. So basically, the American dream sometimes started with rhinoplasty. Forget apple pie, just give me a new nose and a new start. The walls tremble again, but this time they don't shift into operating theaters or parlors. Instead, you find yourself outside, in the open air, but not free. You're standing in a tribal clearing, somewhere in pre-colonial Africa. The firelight illuminates rows of young women, each awaiting her turn before an elder with sharpened tools. Scarification. Here the body itself becomes the canvas, lines etched into skin, filled with ash to raise patterns, transforming flesh into art. These scars were more than beauty. They were symbols of identity, adulthood, fertility. Yet the pain was searing, the risk of infection constant. Girls flinched, some fainted, but endured. For them, the raised lines shimmering in firelight were as prized as pearls or gold. You murmur, meanwhile, here I am whining about one mosquito bite on my arm. They carved entire works of art into their bodies like it was nothing. From Africa, you drift northward, where cold winds bite and snow crunches beneath your feet. Among the Inuit, tattoo needles pierce skin, soot rubbed in to stain permanent lines across cheeks, foreheads, chins. The process is agonizing, yet the result is beauty, maturity, spiritual power. To outsiders it might seem strange, but to the women bearing them, these tattoos are elegance itself, a source of pride greater than any jeweled necklace. And yet, whether through cuts or corsets, scalpels or suit, the common thread remains: beauty demanded pain, demanded risk. What differed was only the shape of sacrifice. Your eyes wander back to the cellar walls, as if the stones themselves are speaking. They whisper of men like Gaspare Tagliacozzi, the 16th century Italian surgeon whose work with reconstructive surgery laid the foundation for cosmetic alteration in Europe. His methods used skin flaps from arms to rebuild noses. Though intended to heal, they also opened the door to elective alteration. He famously wrote, "We restore, repair, and make whole those parts which nature has given, but which fortune has taken away." But behind those noble words, beauty lurked, waiting to demand more, always more. The cellar grows darker now, the lamp sputtering. You hear whispers, distant, growing louder, beauty calling, beckoning. promising that perfection is only one more cut away. The voices blend with modern echoes, commercials, influencers, clinics, promises of a new you. And then, as the air chills, you realize the truth that ties every scalpel stroke, every scar, every twisted ritual together. Beauty was never content with surface powders or painted lips. It always wanted deeper, into flesh, into blood, into bone. You step back as the bucket of bloodied water tips over, spilling across the stones, flowing toward your shoes. The red tide rises, pulling you once again, dragging you down into yet another chamber where beauty's rituals grow darker still, where it is not just the body that suffers, but the soul itself. And that is where you'll awaken next. It begins in silence. Not the comforting silence of a library or the hush before dawn, but a silence thick, oppressive, almost breathing against your skin. You are standing in a darkened room lit only by a single candle, its flame guttering against the drafts that snake along the walls. The air smells faintly of smoke and flowers, roses, but not fresh ones. These are roses that have been dried, crumbled, and mixed with powders. Beauty, you realize, is about to step out of the realm of scalpels and scissors and into the realm of spirit. The woman before you is draped in flowing white, her face veiled. She kneels before a mirror, though the glass is cracked, fractured into jagged lines that distort her reflection. She whispers words not to you, not even to herself, but to the mirror. This is a ritual, a prayer perhaps, that if spoken correctly will bless her face with radiance, charm, and allure. The words are old, passed down like recipes. Her voice trembles, her hands sprinkle powders of ground pearl, sulfur, and dried petals onto the mirror's surface. The idea was simple, but chilling beauty could be summoned. Not just painted, not just carved, but conjured through spellcraft. If you believed enough, if you sacrificed enough, perhaps the universe itself would grant you the face you longed for. You lean closer, trying to catch the words. They feel half like a prayer, half like a desperate bargain. And for a moment you wonder, is this different from chanting mantras at the gym mirror today? Convincing yourself you do look toned, you do look glowing. Self-affirmations, after all, are just the modern world's socially acceptable spellcraft. The flame sputters out. When your eyes adjust, you are somewhere else, Salem, Massachusetts, 1690s. The air tastes of iron, of fear, of smoke from witch trials. Beauty here was not only dangerous, it was damning. Women who mixed potions, herbs, or ointments to make their skin fairer, to keep their hair shining, risked being accused of witchcraft. A simple rosewater tonic could become evidence in court. One young woman sits in her kitchen, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. She looks over her shoulder nervously. She knows her neighbor watches her too closely, waits for a reason to accuse her. But still, she cannot stop. She believes her appearance is her shield, her best chance at marriage, survival, even respect. She rubs a salve of lard and flower oil into her skin. If caught, it might mean the noose. But she whispers, better to risk death than to live ugly and forgotten. You shiver. It's unsettling to realize how a beauty routine, the kind you might casually scroll through on TikTok today, could once have been your execution sentence. Imagine being burned alive for the crime of exfoliating. From Salem, you are swept backward in time, farther east, into the marble halls of ancient Rome. Here, whispers of beauty rituals take on something even darker. Wealthy Roman women often visited shrines not for worship, but for potions of attraction. Priests and witches brewed concoctions, said to bless the drinker with irresistible beauty, or curse rivals with ugliness. Ingredients included everything from animal blood to powdered beetles. A drop here, a smear there, and suddenly beauty was not just a pursuit, but a battlefield of sorcery. A senator's wife gazes into a bronze mirror as her servant paints her lips with a mix of carmine and wax. She smiles faintly, then whispers, "Make sure my rival's cup has the other mixture." You watch as two vessels are placed on a tray, one with beautifying potion, the other with a blend designed to wither the skin, to make pimples bloom like curses. Beauty here was not just personal, it was weaponized. You mutter under your breath. So basically, the original influencer drama was fought not with subtweets, but with blood potions and cursed skincare. Sounds about right. The marble dissolves into shadows again, until you are standing in a chamber lit by rows of flickering votive candles. Spain, late Middle Ages. A noblewoman kneels before a reliquary, her hands clasped tightly. Inside the golden shrine lies a saint's finger bone, said to have healing and beautifying power. Women would flock to touch it, to rub cloths across relics, to press them against their faces, hoping to absorb divine radiance. Her prayer is simple, not for wisdom, not for salvation, but for clear skin, rosy cheeks, a body unmarred by age. To her God is as much a beautician as a savior, and for a moment you realize that faith itself was bent, shaped, repurposed, all to serve beauty's appetite. Your stomach knots. You imagine the modern equivalent, a line of influencers waiting outside Sephora, hands clasped, chanting in unison before a shelf of serums, as though the gods themselves lived in glass bottles. Honestly, not far off. But not all rituals sought blessing, some sought sacrifice. You are pulled farther into shadow, this time among the Aztecs. Their culture embraced ritual sacrifice as a path to maintaining cosmic balance. But buried within those practices was beauty too. Young women chosen for sacrifice were bathed, perfumed, dressed in dazzling garments. Their skin was rubbed with maize flour to glow pale and soft, their lips painted with cochineal red. They were made into visions of idealized beauty, not for themselves, but for the gods. You watch as one such girl walks toward the temple steps, the crowd in awe. She is radiant, untouchable, breathtaking. And then the knife descends, her beauty offered up as currency to sustain the world. The juxtaposition strikes you cold, beauty perfected, only to be destroyed. You whisper, shaken. So the ultimate aglow, up here was literally glowing before being sacrificed. Talk about high-stakes fashion week. The crowd fades, and suddenly you stand in a quiet room in Victorian England. Here the obsession is subtler, but no less disturbing. Spiritualism has swept the nation, and women attend seances not only to speak to the dead, but to borrow their otherworldly glow. Pale, translucent skin becomes a badge of beauty, echoing the supposed look of spirits. One woman sits by candlelight, drinking vinegar water daily to blanch her skin. Another applies belladonna drops to her eyes, making them wide and glassy, like the haunted gaze of a ghost. Their beauty was not just physical. It aspired to the spectral, the uncanny. To look like one had already crossed into death was, bizarrely, to appear most desirable. You sigh. So Victorian women were basically trying to look like they lived in a Tim Burton movie. Goth before goth was cool. The candle gutters were plunging you into near darkness. But as your eyes adjust, you realize there is one more room, one more ritual waiting for you in this first descent. A girl, somewhere in Renaissance Italy, sits alone, a locked box before her. Inside it is a lock of her beloved's hair, pressed between petals, soaked in oils. She believes that by pressing the mixture to her skin, her beauty will remain bound to him, her radiance forever tied to love. It is not magic in the sense of curses or saints, but magic nonetheless, the belief that beauty can be captured, bottled, preserved, eternal. And yet, you sense the futility. The lock of hair is fading, the petals are brown, the oils sour. Beauty, like love, slips through fingers no matter how tightly grasped. The girl looks up, her eyes glistening, and whispers as if to you, "Tell me, does it last in your world? Do they still chase it endlessly?" The question hangs in the silence, echoing louder than any ritual, any prayer, any spell. And before you can answer, the ground beneath you tilts, pulling you deeper still, toward the heart of rituals that do not just summon beauty, but demand its ultimate price. The floor is gone. The candlelight flickers out, and you tumble into a place heavy with drums, chanting, and the musky scent of burning herbs. Your ears buzz with rhythm, heartbeat fast. You're no longer in Europe's pale saints parlors. You are standing in the center of a voodoo ceremony in the Caribbean. Women move in circles, their skin shimmering with oils, their hair dusted with powders. You smell rum, sweat, and ash. Here, beauty is not simply painted. It is invoked. Ritual powders, called gris, are scattered across the body, believed to bring magnetism, sexual power, irresistible charm. A priestess dips her fingers into a small pouch, brushing the powder across her cheekbones, down her neck, into the crook of her elbows. The crowd watches as her skin seems to glow, the air thick with the belief that she has been transfigured. It is mesmerizing. Not mascara, not foundation, but sorcery in loose, chalky dust. Yet the intent feels startlingly familiar. She whispers to the crowd that men will follow her, women will envy her, doors will open for her, because beauty is not just adornment, it is social currency. And suddenly you think, ah yes, the original beauty filter. Only this one's sprinkled, not digital. The rhythm shifts, and so do you. Now you find yourself in India, beneath the sweltering heat of lamps in a courtyard. It's late evening in the 16th century, and women of the Mughal court are gathered. The air is fragrant with saffron, sandalwood, and rosewater. They are preparing a ritual that is both beautifying and binding, a mixture of turmeric paste and sacred prayers, pressed into the skin during moonlit nights to ensure everlasting glow. One woman leans close to another, murmuring words not unlike a secret spell. The turmeric stains her skin golden, the sandalwood cools her flesh, but there is something deeper at play. Beauty here is tied to divinity, to cosmic rhythm, as if the moon itself has a stake in their radiance. You glance upward at the full moon hanging overhead and can't help thinking. So basically, these were the original moonlight skin care routines. Modern influencers would charge 60 a jar and call it lunar glow. But not all rituals were about glow. Some were about reshaping, about twisting flesh until it resembled ideals that humans barely belonged to. You are suddenly in a cold room in early modern Russia. A girl is seated on a stool, her mother behind her whispering prayers. In her hand is a small wooden charm, carved roughly, blessed by a local wise woman. It is said that if rubbed against her face daily, it will narrow her cheeks, sharpen her features, and make her beautiful. The girl obeys faithfully, though the charm cuts into her skin, leaving bruises. Her beauty will not be won by powders or oils alone. It must be pressed, beaten, carved into existence. The irony stings. This is essentially a medieval jade roller, except it drew blood instead of releasing tension. You mutter under your breath, well, at least the jade roller doesn't leave scars, unless you drop it on your foot. From Russia, the air shifts again, warm and sticky. You are in West Africa. Centuries ago, in certain communities, elaborate scarification rituals were practiced not only as identity markers, but as beauty itself. The skin became a canvas, each cut deliberate, each line an adornment. Women bore these designs proudly, their scars shimmering in the firelight, a living testimony of endurance and elegance. You lean in, watching one young woman endure the ritual. Her face is calm, her fists clenched. Each slice is agony, yet she breathes through it, because the outcome will make her radiant in the eyes of her community. Pain here is not hidden. It is the price of beauty, the proof of strength. You exhale, realizing in every era, in every culture, beauty demands something. Blood, time, faith, money, always something. Today's sacrifices might look different. Maybe hours of Botox appointments, or waking up at 5 a.m. for pilates. But the principle hasn't changed. Beauty comes with receipts. The room shifts again, and now you are deep in the incense-soaked sanctuaries of ancient China. Women gather before altars, bowing with delicate offerings, silks, jade combs, small flasks of perfume, to the goddess She, one of the legendary four beauties. They whisper prayers, begging to inherit just a sliver of her legendary allure. One woman kneels so fervently that her forehead bruises against the stone floor. She prays not for wealth, not for long life, but for skin as clear as jade and eyes as sparkling as autumn pools. The desperation is palpable. To her, beauty is destiny, her only weapon in a world of political marriages and fragile status. You can't help but grin wryly. Manifestation boards, 2,000 years early. Just swap the Pinterest colleges for jade combs and goddess statues. The sanctuary fades, and suddenly you are back in Europe, but this time in the dark underbelly of the Renaissance. Alchemists, men who claimed to touch the secrets of the universe, sold women elixirs for eternal beauty. They whispered promises: drink this tincture of mercury and gold, and your skin will never wrinkle. Smear this concoction of lead and vinegar, and you'll look forever youthful. Of course, the truth was different. The elixirs were poison. The immortal glow came with rotting teeth, bleeding gums, brittle bones. Women, desperate, drank anyway. They would rather die glowing than live plain. A noblewoman smiles faintly in her gilded mirror, her lips stained, her skin pale from the deadly concoction. She whispers, "See, I am radiant." You notice her teeth, blackened, her breath sour with decay. You fight back nausea. Beauty here is indistinguishable from ruin. You shake your head and murmur, basically the Renaissance version of vaping, sold as glamorous, but it's literally eating you alive. The candlelight gutters once more, but it doesn't go out. Instead, it sharpens, illuminating something new. You are in Japan, Edo period. Women sit in silence as their teeth are painted black, a ritual called ohagoro. The lacquer glistens, sticky, as brush after brush coats enamel. To them, black teeth were not grotesque but elegant, proof of sophistication, maturity allure. You watch as one young bride gazes into a polished copper mirror, her teeth gleaming like obsidian. She smiles proudly. She believes she looks beautiful, and in her world she does. The disconnect jars you. To your eyes it looks monstrous. But then again, what would someone from the Edo period think if they saw modern people bleaching their teeth so aggressively that they glow like fluorescent bulbs? Beauty is always in the eye of culture's beholder. The bride closes her lips, and with that, the world tilts again. You are not in Japan anymore, but in a place stranger still. A quiet Victorian parlor, where a woman stares into her mirror, whispering her beauty wish at the stroke of midnight. She believes the mirror itself is alive, that if she pleads with enough sincerity, her reflection will shift, morph, transform into the ideal she craves. For a moment, just a flicker, you think you see it. Her reflection moves, subtly, not quite matching her face. Did the mirror just smile back at her before she did? The hairs on your arms rise. Maybe, just maybe, belief made the glass bend. She exhales, whispering, "Tomorrow, they'll see me as I truly am." You take a step back, unsettled. The line between ritual and horror is razor thin. Beauty rituals were not always about powders and potions. They were about surrendering to forces bigger, stranger, hungrier. And as the candle burns low, you feel the world shudder, preparing to pull you deeper still. Chapter after chapter has shown you beauty's cost in blood, bone, poison, fire. But now, standing here, you sense that the next descent will be darker still. Because some rituals did not just demand sacrifice. They demanded transformation. You hear a whisper, not from the woman in the parlor, not from the candle, but from the shadows themselves. Would you trade your soul for beauty? And with that question, the flame goes out. The descent begins before you realize it. There's no candle this time. No powder on the floor, no drums in the air. You are standing before a mirror so tall it seems to scrape the ceiling, its surface fogged as though it's breathing. Your reflection is faint, blurred, as though the glass isn't sure what to make of you. And then the images begin. One after another, the most extreme rituals humanity ever pursued in the name of beauty flicker in and out of the mist. Each one less about decoration and more about transformation. You lean closer. What you're about to witness is not beauty as paint on skin, or charm whispered in prayers. This is beauty as metamorphosis, beauty as self-erasure. The first vision, ancient Mesoamerica. Among certain Maya elites, skulls of infants were bound tightly with wooden boards, slowly reshaping them into long, sloped forms. To them, elongated heads were a mark of beauty, nobility, and intelligence. To you, it looks alien, like something drawn in a science fiction sketchbook. Parents pressed these boards against their children's skulls day after day, for years, until bone hardened into shape. The result, faces stretched, foreheads sloped, skulls rising like mountains. The children grew into adults who embodied their culture's definition of beauty, though to outsiders they appeared uncanny, otherworldly. You shiver, whispering. So, basically the original cosmetic surgery package, except without anesthesia or consent. The mist shifts, and you're elsewhere. Tibet, high in the mountains. Here, monks describe tales of women who sought eternal youth by consuming pearls ground to powder. They believed pearls, with their luminous sheen, carried the essence of purity and beauty. So, they swallowed them, day after day. You picture a noblewoman at her lacquered table, crunching down the bitter dust, imagining her skin glowing like moonlight. But in truth, pearls are just calcium carbonate, no more magical than chalk. Over time, the women became frail, their bodies brittle, collapsing beneath the weight of their own radiance. And suddenly, you chuckle. Basically, they were eating skincare serums raw. Imagine downing an entire jar of face cream and calling it dinner. The fog grows thicker. A new scene emerges, this one dim, smoky. A secret chamber in Renaissance Italy, where whispers tell of the acqua tofana, a beauty potion, sold in tiny, delicate vials, that promised women radiance. It was laced with arsenic, lead, and belladonna. The catch? It wasn't really for beauty. It was poison, cleverly disguised. Women used it not on their faces, but in their husbands' wine cups. Beauty here was survival. The radiant glow was not on skin, but on life itself. Freedom purchased by widowhood. You can't help muttering. The first multitasking product doubles as face serum and murder weapon. Sephora could never. But before the grin settles, the vision tilts darker. You are pulled into Polynesia, centuries past, where tattooing was not just art but a transformation of body and spirit. For women, elaborate tattoos across lips, chins, and thighs were not only marks of beauty, but sacred symbols of maturity, fertility, and status. The ink was hammered in with bone combs and mollets, each strike piercing flesh, driving pigment into skin. The pain was unimaginable, lasting days. Women screamed, shook, even fainted, yet they endured. The final designs, permanent and intricate, made them luminous in their communities. You lean in, your stomach twisting at the sound of bone striking flesh. The pain is endless, yet the pride afterward even more so. They were not painted pretty, they were remade. The air thickens. The mist feels hotter now, pressing against your skin. Another vision, harsher still. You are back in China, but this time not in temples. You are in a courtyard, watching young girls stumble forward on mutilated feet. Their mothers bind them with strips of cloth, pulling toes beneath arches, crushing bone until the feet are small, twisted and bleeding. Lotus feet, they called them. The pinnacle of grace, beauty, femininity. Men composed poems about their delicacy, their fragility. But in truth, the women could barely walk. Their lives narrowed to tiny steps and endless pain. You stare as one girl whimpers, her face contorted. Her mother hushes her, whispering that she will be adored, worshipped. Her screams are silenced beneath the promise of beauty. You exhale sharply, muttering under your breath. High heels look merciful compared to this. At least those you can take off at the end of the night. The mirror fog swirls violently, as though shaken by the horror. And then, darkness. A silence that weighs like a tomb. When the fog clears, you are in a different kind of chamber. Not ritual, not temple, but surgery. The year is the early 20th century. Plastic surgery has begun, born from the trenches of war, where doctors rebuilt shattered faces. But quickly, it spread to women who desired beauty. A woman lies on a table, her nose cut and reshaped, her eyelids sewn tighter, her breasts bound and lifted. She whispers through swollen lips that she has become perfect, though her bandages are still stained with blood. This, you realize, is the modern continuation of everything you've seen. Still pain, still scars, still sacrifice, only now under anesthesia and electric light. You lean close to the mirror, whispering to yourself, so this is it. From skull binding to BBLs. Same story, different tools. But the mirror does not agree. Its fog shifts one final time, and what you see is not past or present, but something beyond. Faces dissolve, blend, stretch. Beauty itself is no longer human. It is filters, distortions, avatars. A digital girl with impossibly smooth skin, glowing eyes, elongated limbs. Not a woman, not a person, but an algorithm's dream. You feel your stomach drop. All the ancient rituals, the poisons, the scarifications, the powders, they were trying to do this. To break the human mold, to become more than flesh. And the mirror whispers back, you are not done yet. The fog tightens around you, pulling you closer, until you can almost step through the glass. Beauty has always cost blood. But perhaps the next cost will be something worse. Your reflection smiles without you. The glass no longer shows history, it shows possibility. It shows what happens when beauty stops being skin and bone and becomes something else. Something coded, curated, perfected pixel by pixel. You reach out, fingertips brushing the mirror. It ripples, liquid, like as if it wants to pull you in. Behind the surface, you see faces stitched together from thousands of others. Lips that never cracked, eyes that never blinked, skin that never aged. It is beautiful, yes, but it is hollow. The ancients would not recognize this reflection. And yet they would. Because wasn't it always the same? A skull reshaped for elegance, feet bound for grace, faces carved by knives, veins poisoned for radiance. All acts of stripping away humanity in pursuit of something higher, something better, you whisper. So this is it. The end of the ritual. Not temples, not powders, not blood, just pixels. But the mirror chuckles. It actually chuckles low and cruel, as though amused. You think it ends here? It asks without speaking. The body has always been the altar. And the altar has no bottom. The fog shifts once more. You are shown a different kind of ritual, one not of the past but of the future. Needles injecting not just fillers and Botox, but nanobots repairing cells, rewriting DNA. People who do not simply hide wrinkles but erase them forever. Beauty without decay. You feel your chest tighten. For centuries, beauty rituals scarred and poisoned. Now they promise immortality. But immortality comes with its own horrors. What happens to a face that never changes? A smile that never fades? At what point does perfection itself become grotesque? The mirror does not answer. Instead, it turns back, almost kindly, to a simpler vision: a girl in the Middle Ages, grinding herbs to make rouge for her cheeks. Her hands are cracked, her dress plain, but she hums as she works. The pigment stains her fingertips red. She rubs it on her face, smiles, and for a moment, she looks radiant. Not because of what she's applied, but because she believes in it. You blink. After all the blood, bone, and poison, it is strange to see beauty as harmless as a crushed flower. But that, too, is part of the cycle. From harmless to harmful, from ritual to obsession. The pendulum swings endlessly. A sigh leaves your chest, soft, tired. You almost want to step back from the mirror, to let the fog settle, and leave the stories behind. But the glass isn't done with you. No, it has saved the cruelest scene for last. The mist clears to show a woman sitting at a vanity in 18th century France. Her skin is powdered ghost white, so pale she looks almost dead. Her cheeks are flushed with vermilion, mercury sulfide, toxic enough to rot her skin from the inside. She dabs at her lips, paints her veins blue to appear delicate, ethereal, and then she smiles at herself in the mirror. But her smile falters. Beneath the powder, her skin is already blistering. She knows it. She knows what this makeup will do. She knows it will scar her, sicken her, maybe kill her. And still she powders her face, again and again, because without it, she feels invisible. Her gaze locks with yours through the centuries, and you realize this was never really about beauty. It was about control, about visibility, about power, about being seen in a world that looked away. You murmur, and we still do it, don't we? Different tools, same desperation. The mirror's fog trembles. Faces flicker again. Bound feet, scarred skin, poisoned lips, filtered selfies. They blur into one, until all you see is a single reflection: yours. And suddenly, it isn't quite yours anymore. The jawline is sharper. The skin is smoother. The eyes are brighter. You don't look tired, or wrinkled, or human. You look perfect. Too perfect. Your stomach drops. This is no longer you. It is the you the rituals have been chasing all along. The unattainable shape beyond the mirror. Born from centuries of blood, ash, and bone. You take a step back. The reflection does not. It smiles at you, lips curling with something between seduction and menace. The fog whispers again, curling around your ears like smoke. You can join us. You already have. Every ritual you've witnessed lives in you. Every cut, every powder, every poison, every click, every filter. The body is still the altar. And you? It leans forward, pressing its face against the glass, until you can see every perfect poreless inch. You are still sacrificing. The room grows silent. Your reflection straightens, tilts its head, and blinks once, just once, before the mirror goes dark. You are left staring at yourself. Just yourself. Flawed, tired, human. But in the silence, you wonder. When you look again tomorrow, will the reflection still be yours? Or will it smile first?